a soldier, an airman, and a Marine walk into a room. This show is The Punchline. My name is Ryan Smeltz, and you're watching Veteran Talk Show.
Really spend like $30. You might spend like $8 because you've been like, I'm fucked up. Because like you do lower your blood sugar, and there's so much sugar in alcohol, you just like you get wasted, and it's sometimes good, sometimes bad.
No, my it's like I tried it a few months ago. Like everybody was talking about it. Like I heard it was being mentioned on like Joe Rogan and I had other friends who were doing it. I was like, all right, I'll try this. I made it to like 11 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I'm fucking hungry. I was like, I need a fucking burger, man. Yeah. I was starting to get, I was starting to get hangry.
Yeah.
Like where I was just like, people were coming into my office like, hey, can we do this? I was like, fuck you. It's like I just quit smoking or something.
Yeah.
Like I was like, fuck you out of my office. I don't give a shit. People were like, whoa, calm down. I'm like, sorry, I'm a little hungry right now. Like, go to lunch or something. I texted my wife. I was like, I don't know how these people do intermittent fasting. I'm not doing it. I'm gonna go eat some lunch.
Right.
So good on you though for doing it, man.
It's
like,
tough, man. It's real tough.
I mean, my goal for the new year is to eat more balanced diets. Like get rid of, like I eat a lot of red meat.
Yeah.
And so I want to get rid of eating a lot. I want to go to like more lean meats. And then just have like have a good, like wake up, have my coffee, maybe take like a piece of fruit with me on the way to work.
Yeah. Eat
that, and then have like a balanced lunch and then a balanced dinner. And just be more well-rounded instead of just being like, I'm going to eat like a huge ass lunch and then like nothing but carbs for dinner. Cause I'm, grew up Italian.
Yeah.
My mom's like almost 100% Italian. So like, I'm very used to eating pasta all the time.
Yeah.
And like,
trust me, I get it. I'm Italian.
Yeah.
My dad's 100% Italian. My mom's 50% Italian. And like, trust me. And both my parents suck at cooking. So I had to teach myself how to cook. Because my dad would make spaghetti. And it was just spaghetti with butter and salt. That's it. No sauce.
Butter noodles.
No nothing. It was just that. I'm just like, so I grew up and I was just like, this fucking sucks. I want some flavor. So I had to teach myself how to cook. But the one thing I would recommend is like when anybody is trying to do intermittent fasting, change their diet, try to move over to lean foods, just remember it's a marathon. You know this. Don't come out the gates fucking sprinting.
Oh, no.
It's just like one step after the next. Just like, once you get a little bit hungry, water is the number one thing. Like water, and you'd be pissing all damn day long. But
yeah,
it's better to be pissing than spending your money.
Yeah,
like
during the week,
cheeseburger.
I normally drink nothing but like, so I either drink alcohol or water or coffee.
Yeah,
very rarely will I drink anything other than those three drinks.
And alcohol and coffee have water in them.
Yeah, exactly. Right, beer's 95% water, so
it's an added benefit.
But like for me, I'm just like, so when we were in Louisiana, we did paleo. My wife and I did that paleo diet.
I fucking love paleo diets.
I was all about it for a little while, but then after a while, like there's just certain things like I just do not like. And I tried it. Like we made all the different cauliflower stuff, like the rice and I, no matter how we tried it, I was just like, my taste buds just were not on board.
Yeah,
it was just like my taste buds were like, no, this is fucking terrible. What are you doing? But I mean, we did it for about 60 days, and then my wife was like, I can't eat this much because she doesn't eat a lot of meat. If she, she doesn't mind like being vegetarian. Like she will go, 2-3 weeks without having a piece of meat at all.
Well,
and it's not because
like she's A-blooded or B-blooded or AB.
Yes, I don't. She's I think she's AB.
Yeah.
But she's like, I don't need the meat. Like me, I'm like, it's not a meal unless it's got meat in it.
You're probably an O blood type.
Yeah, I'm the universal donor.
Oh, no shit.
Was it O negative or whatever?
O negative.
Yeah. I'm the universal donor.
AB is the universal recipient.
Yeah,
recipient.
Like AB, I think it's AB positive is the universal recipient.
Yep.
But now,
yeah, I can automatically tell that with people when they're like, yeah, I don't usually eat a lot of meat. And I was like, you're probably like, if they say they eat a lot of rice, a lot of things like that, it's because of the enzymes that are built around a certain person's blood cell that makes them crave meat or makes them not crave meat.
Like seriously, my mouth will water when I see meat on television. I'll be like, steak.
You're like
if I see like
I need one of those.
Yeah, like if I see like
right now,
like not going to Outback because it's shit, but I could go buy a steak and make a good ass steak right now.
Everybody shits on Outback steaks, and I'm always like, I come from the ghetto. I'm like, that shit looks good as fuck. I'll have it.
To me, all the steakhouse, like, there's not really. Why would you go spend that kind of money at a steak? Like,
I'll tell you, my buddy Alex, that's a pilot. We went through basic together. He finally deployed to Kuwait.
I love this. Deployed
to Kuwait.
Oh yeah, that's a kick-ass deployment.
As a first lieutenant.
Oh yeah, that must have been real nice.
Yeah. Going on and off post on the free time, like.
Oh yeah. Oh, you're gonna go out in town? That's fine. Yeah, that's not a problem.
Deployment? No. So he got back and he was like, "Come get me." I'm back, and then the bridge was out on Fort Hood, so I had to go the long way around. Took like an hour to drive around to get to where he was. I picked him up and coming back through, instead of going the back roads, we went through Temple. Because there's a city, he was able to get a cell phone. Then we were like, hey, let's meet these other friends. We'll go get a steak or go out to eat. Went to a really nice steakhouse, and he was like picking me up, helping me out, take care of my dog or whatever. I'll buy your meal. And I was like, what's the biggest New York strip you have?
What's the most expensive steak you have right now? No, I mean, I made steak. So this is the funny story. So after I got out of the Marines, I went back to college. And I went to college.
What everybody does. That's when they get out of the military.
Well, that's what I told everyone to do.
The first year is being stupid as shit. Let me go get some education.
Well, no, I was like, fucking free money, bro.
Yeah,
like free fucking money.
I know.
Like,
I did the same thing.
It's not anything, especially that post 9/11. Like, it's nothing to laugh at.
No, like, it's good money.
It is good fucking. And if you get when I went to college, I like worked at a bar in Denver. So I went to Denver, and I went to culinary school out there, and I did. I worked at a bar at the same time. So but I worked like 3 nights a week in like their kitchen, doing bar back stuff, occasionally pouring drinks.
You didn't have to pay any out of state tuition either.
Yeah.
Post 9/11, they canceled that.
Yeah, so like I didn't pay a single cent for tuition. I got my, for being enrolled, I got a monthly check, and then I got my benefits stipend that I have. Yeah. And I was like, sorry, burped because of the beer. But then I remember I was like, my car died that we took out to Colorado. I was like, I'm gonna buy a new car, so I was like budgeting and everything. I looked at actually what I was making and bringing in. And I was like, I remember looking at that. I was like, I'm probably making more money than most 26-year-olds. Yep. And I'm not spending it at all. Like, literally, I'm either at work or at the house. And when I go out, I usually go out to the bar I work at and hang out there and, just hang out with friends there. Yeah.
Free drinks.
Yeah. Yeah. Comp was my best friend. Like, we had a comp tab on that. For a while, it was like, oh, hey, what's up, local guy who comes in every night at 9 o'clock? You want a shot and a beer? Oh, luckily, comp's going to buy your first round. When I worked there, we got Jameson. We sold more Jameson in that bar. Okay, we didn't sell more. We purchased more Jameson than any other bar in Colorado. And we could fit like maybe 30 people, 40 people in that bar.
Wow.
And they came in, they were like, the Jameson girls came and they were like giving gifts away and shit. We're like,
nice.
Like, you realize
they got Jameson girls?
Oh, yeah. Oh, all the liquor companies do.
Damn.
I will tell you, the Arctic Tequila people, when I used to deal with them, every single one of them looked like they should be in like Maxim or something. I remember the Arctic girls, I was just like, God damn there.
So I got a question to ask you. You said you went to culinary school, right?
Yeah.
Do you do anything with the culinary arts?
No, not anymore.
So I got to watch his Outback commercials.
I watch it. Oh yeah, I watch that. So I do. So when I got out, I went and got a bachelor's degree, and part of my bachelor's program was going through the culinary program.
Okay.
So the culinary program was an associate's degree, but I got the bachelor's that incorporates the culinary. So I got like the management side, supply chain, all of that.
Nice.
But so my whole professional career, this is really great for a former Marine. My senior year or my final year was in my senior, because I went to school for like 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And got my bachelor's because I had so much shit transfer in. Oh, you totally missed that.
That is exactly why I did that. I put it there. I was like, we can throw cans in there and then make fun of each other when we miss.
I've got the long one. Like do a little flip.
Well, it's going to get full eventually, and then
then it'll be. This is going to be
balancing act from a distance.
Game.
Yeah,
I was really hoping none of y'all saw how bad I missed. I was embarrassed. I know I grabbed my shot at it too, and I was just like, woo,
obviously,
way over.
Basketball is not your sport.
It actually was. Maybe if I shot like this
doesn't make any
I
sense.
have to do the gooseneck.
I'm gonna do a real quick intro.
Okay.
We've been recording, but we're not live.
Are we recording?
Oh,
yeah,
damn. I thought we were just
bullshit.
bullshit.
I had no idea.
No, that's what I want though. But I want to do an intro for the live part, so it makes sense. Welcome back, everybody. We're here doing a second recording session for the Veteran Talk Show. We actually have a website now, veterantalkshow.com.
Built a website?
Yeah, it's not a lot. I haven't done much to it, but we have colors, a little
Logos.
Yeah.
Colors.
For as a placeholder
with a beard.
As a placeholder for our video post section, I have one of Dan Crenshaw's campaign ads. Have you seen those?
No.
They're super badass.
I got so, I'm glad election season's over because I got so fed up. I was getting the phone calls.
But it's Dan Crenshaw.
I just got fed up. Did you guys not get the texts and the phone calls?
Yeah.
Every other day. I was like, I don't fucking.
But I also get those for your Amazon package isn't delivered. Would you like some Viagra? We
I don't
have
get any of that.
free
No, I don't get
iPhone 12. Click here. They're all spam and stuff like
But
I
the
just delete.
ones were ridiculous.
They were physically calling me, and it wasn't like,
Yeah.
crap party.
who are you going to vote for? I was like, how's that any of your fucking business? I don't know you. But we want to talk to you about Biden, or we want to talk to you about Trump. I was like, I don't give a shit.
You remind me of the guy that makes these hats. He owns a company called Southpaw Laser Concepts in Texas. He's an Army veteran, and he would get the text messages and mess with them. And they're like, can we count on your vote for so-and-so? And he's like, no matter what it was, he's like, I'm voting for the other guy.
So my dad was involved in politics for a little while back in the 70s. And then my mom worked in state government for a long time. And they're polar opposites. My dad's ultra conservative. My mom is ultra liberal.
Interesting.
Think dad went to Vietnam. He didn't, but just think the type of military guy, very conservative. Mom would have gone to Woodstock, right? That was the polar opposites there. But we were raised.
So Forrest and Jenny.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But we were raised talking politics and everything.
So are you an AIDS baby?
Am I an AIDS baby? I'm a something, I'll tell you that. But no, we grew up talking politics and
jokes.
When people would call me, I was looking for a job, so I had to answer all the phone calls that I was getting because I didn't know if this was maybe a job I had applied for.
True.
Or what. So I was like,
yup.
And they'd always talk. So I just started fucking with them. I was just like, oh, I'm going to fuck with these people. I would get text. I got a text message from it's like, hey, this is Newt Gingrich, and we want your support.
Fuck?
And I was like, it's like, well, can we count on your support? And I'm all caps, fuck no. I was just I'm just gonna mess with them. I got more important shit going on. And I vote, and I encourage everyone to vote. And I was just but I'm over all the phone calls, all the text messages. People would be like, oh, well, it sounds like who you're going to vote for, and blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah. Well, you want to come volunteer? And I was like, no, I hate you people. You're bothering me.
I'm trying to live my life. It's funny because,
do you ever feel like you should pick up the telephone? I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah. No, you're good.
You ever feel like you should pick up the telephone and the person that's politically, trying to sell their candidate, and you should just be like, I was really thinking about voting for Dan Forrester. Yeah. But since you called me during the middle of my lunchtime, I'm voting for Roy Cooper because fuck you. Yeah. You know what? Dan Forrester doesn't chew Big Red, so fuck you.
I did that to, I can't remember who they were calling about. But I was getting ready for a Zoom interview.
Yeah.
And, they called me and I'm like, hey, I don't have time to talk. They were like, well, we're just going to take 30 seconds of your time. And I'm like, no, I'm about to hop on a Zoom interview.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we just want to explain to candidates. And I'm like, who's your candidate? And they told me, I was like, Well, not voting for that guy. And I hung up the phone. I was like, come on, man. Like, people got lives. I get you wanting to, support your people or whatever.
Yeah.
But fuck.
Well, I mean, when it comes down to it, like, it's a job. So the person, I kind of feel bad for the people that do the face-to-face or the cold calling, because they're literally like interning because their degree is in, I don't know, political science. And I had a guy on my other show, Business and Brews, and he had a very, very short political career for a local campaign. Yeah. And he explained it. And it's like, at the end of the day, these people might, like he said, the advantage to him being involved in politics was there was a lot of correlations between that and running a business. And he's glad that he did it. Don't miss.
Made it.
There was if you miss a layup, you're getting so much shit.
There was a lot of.
I'm not a basketball player.
There was a lot of correlations between running a political campaign and running a business. So I can see how someone that might want to buy a franchise or start a business might get a little bit involved in politics. But if they're making minimum wage, they're literally just making those calls, sending those text messages for a job,
aren't they? Like, I think most
there's. I would say the bulk of them, but at the same time, as you get up from local to state to federal level, there's still people who do stuff like that who are paid, either paid interns or paid employees for the campaign. And I mean, that's one of the problems that I have with it, because it's like, if you contribute to someone's political campaign and they're hiring people to work for them, then it's like, all right, so am I really furthering your campaign, or am I just helping some kid buy lunch?
Yeah.
It's like, there's plenty of other jobs out there, but
no, I mean, yeah, it's over and done with. Thank God. Yeah. We can hopefully move on. Hopefully.
No.
I don't think we will, but it is what it is.
So you said a little bit about getting out of the Marines and going straight to college.
Yeah, I went straight to college. Like, I went to Denver. We moved to Denver because I wanted to get into the alcohol world, and I wanted specifically to get into beer. And at the time, Raleigh was like, didn't have the brew scene that it has now.
Yeah.
So I moved to Denver because they had a brewing scene. And my final year, I got an internship at a distillery up there, and I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'll go. I'll go distill." And I did. I did
distill
everything.
What? Whiskey,
vodka, rum, agave.
So you made tequila
everything.
too, huh?
Yeah. No, it's called agave because we weren't in the tequila region of Mexico. It's kind of like champagne. It's kind of like champagne.
I'm just gonna pull off my pants. You can start jerking me off right here.
Whoa, that escalated quickly.
I mean, you were like, no,
it's
agave, not tequila, because of the region. It was made in Mexico.
Yeah. Well, it's part. So working in that world, you find like all these nuanced rules.
Yeah.
Like bourbon is bourbon because it's X amount percentage of the mash is corn, and then it's got to be aged for so long in American oak barrels.
Scotch is the same way. Champagne was created in Champagne.
Champagne.
We don't say it correct. Like, I was over there backpacking through New Zealand. Got a bottle of champagne. This French girl gave me a 45-minute lecture.
Oh yeah. There's rule. I mean, there's a governing body to all of this.
That's such a pain in the ass.
There's the nuances, even in wine, like to be able to call something like Cabernet, it has to have X amount of grapes or whatever. Like, there's rules to everything, and it you don't realize it until you go in and start working in this world.
Huh.
But when I was graduated, the distiller was like, "Hey, you were a free intern. We're 3 guys who work here and own the place. We can't afford to keep you." And I ended up going to work for an alcohol distributor, and that's what I've been doing the last 6 years.
Is that what?
Do you still make your own beer or anything like that? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah,
again, Ryan.
Me and my buddy
make your own beer, wine, things like that.
We make. I want to get back into running a still again, but me and my buddy will make beer every so often. Like, we just kind of get a bug up our ass, and we're like, yeah, let's go out and get the ingredients and brew a batch of beer.
What would it take for you to create your own still?
Well, I mean, welding.
Got a welder.
Got a welder. No, I mean, it would take it's not creating the still, because you can create one pretty easily, especially a small one. But I don't know what the regulations are for like what you can, because distilling is very, very specific. Like there is the TTB that regulates all distilled products. Well, most of all alcohol. So I don't know kind of if there is a regulation that says you can distill 5 gallons of spirit and not be in trouble. Like moonshiners, right? Moonshiners, like you can, and if you're running a still, people are going to know it, unless you're out in the middle of nowhere and no one's coming by, because it puts off a smell. Like when you're running the mash and you're running the still.
Yeah, we walked into Carolina Brewing Company, something like that. It was. It's not like sulfur so bad.
Yeah, you got like that. I love that mildewy smell that comes with fermenting and all of that.
What I'm just thinking about is like, what's the turnaround profit? I know that there's time and place to like.
I mean, it depends on, I guess, what you're doing.
Like I feel like bourbon is so big here in North Carolina.
Well, bourbon takes a long time.
Yeah, it takes 7 years.
It takes a long time to make bourbon from corn to bottling.
Well, what I was thinking is the rye. Rye is like the new upcoming like bourbon of choice.
You're still gonna have to, like most of the stuff that's clear, you can just kind of pump out like vodka.
Yeah.
You don't really need to put into a barrel. You aren't putting that into a barrel and aging.
Okay.
You're like, but any kind of whiskey, unless it's like a White Dog whiskey, which is not aged, you're throwing that into some kind of barrel, whether it's whiskey or bourbon.
What the fuck is White Dog whiskey? I've never heard of that before in my life.
It's clear whiskey.
Is it good? Is it bad?
I mean, it's grain alcohol. I mean, it depends on, I guess, who's making it. I've had some Clear Dog that's like, whoo, that burns. And I've had some that's like, oh, actually, that's pretty nice. I like that. So I guess it just depends on what the formula is, and who's making it and how much knowledge they have in distilling. I mean, I don't have that much. I worked as an intern for like 2.5 months, so I wasn't like I'm the expert on distilling. I've got friends who can sit down. Like I got 2 friends of mine in Colorado, and he can sit down and tell you anything you want to know about brewing and distilling, because he's just done that for so long. He doesn't do it anymore. But he'll sit down with you and just be like, he'll break down the science. He'll be like, oh, you crack the grain at this point and it releases X amount of fermentable sugars. And if you're trying to get that, like he can go real deep into it. And then my other friend, she was, I think, one of the few, there's only a few head distillers who are female. And she was working at, I feel like I have to text her. She worked at this distillery up in Denver, and she was doing their distilling. It was a married couple who owned it, and they were doing everything themselves. And then they hired her on, and she went in and started distilling and making stuff, and was really good at it. I mean, they wrote articles about her.
Wow.
Damn, I just came up with something really terrible to say, but I'm not going to say it.
Do it.
I say we go into the White Dog whiskey business and we bring her in and we call our shit White Bitch Whiskey.
I don't think that would go over well with her. That's a hard sell. She'll be like, I'll fucking cut you, dude.
I'm sure she will, but I'm just saying from like a selling point, and like what you get. You know how there's White Claw? We could sell White Bitch.
So again, so when you're doing distilling, you've got to submit like everything to the for label approval. So
you're talking branding.
Yeah. So you've got to say, hey, this is bourbon. Here's the formula that I've made for bourbon. This is what I'm calling it. And then the TTB's got to look at it and go, yes, you can call this bourbon. So to call something like White Dog whiskey, you call like bitch White Dog whiskey or whatever. But it's still got to be called White Dog whiskey. The TTB will be like, you've got to call this. That's what
so you could label it bitch, but White Dog whiskey.
Yeah, but it's got to be labeled as White Dog whiskey.
I think that's like $1 million idea right there.
I've actually looked at, like, I've talked to my buddy, and he and I have discussed maybe opening up distilleries, and we're like, dude, it's going to take like $250,000 minimum.
Yeah.
Damn.
To open it, and you're not going to see a profit for like 6 years.
Yeah.
Like minimum.
I think
so you're going to be and this, when I say $250,000, I'm talking like, this is like MacGyver, I found a pump at a junkyard, put it back together myself. This is just minimum. I mean,
just what you need to start.
And here in North Carolina, I mean, the liquor laws are so kind of screwed up. It would almost be pointless to start. I mean, there are distilleries here that are mildly successful.
Yeah.
But I mean, they've got a lot of backing behind them, I'm sure, to kind of help prop them up. They've got probably a deep investment culture going on.
We might have talked about it on Monday. I'm not sure if that's when we ran into it, but him and I found
it's a crazy world. I love it. I mean, it's a lot of fun to be in. So I was in that world. So I went and did distribution. So I went from manufacturing to distribution. Then I went to New Orleans. Yeah, and was in New Orleans doing distribution for 3 years.
Yeah,
and that was a lot of fun.
You said they were like the number 1 or number 2.
Yeah, the company I worked for at the time was like number 2, and then when I left them to come back home, and I'm really sad I had to leave those guys because I love that company. We made the decision to come home because of family. Yeah. Which I'm glad we were able to come home, because after the last couple of weeks being home has been really nice, because we've had some kind of family emergencies. But so I left that company. It was a really tough decision for me, but at the time it was number 2. And then after I left, they merged with a company that was out west. So when I left them, they were in like 20 something states, which made them at the time the second largest alcohol distributor in the nation. And I'm sure now that they've merged with this company that's out on the West Coast, they're now number 1, if not like neck and neck.
1.5.
Yeah.
Something like that.
They're a massive alcohol distributor. They don't exist here in North Carolina, again, because of the liquor law. God, you suck! So far, I am the only one that's made it.
No, I made my first one.
I didn't see it.
It doesn't count.
Doesn't count. So is it recorded now?
Do you want a name drop? You don't have to, but
I don't know how they'd feel about it, to be honest with you, because they had very strict policies.
But it's good that the reasons that you parted ways.
They understood. They understood when I told my boss I had made a decision to leave. He's like, dude, I get it. Like, I understand.
Before we get off the topic too much, was that a Back to the Future text?
Yes, it was.
Oh shit!
Yes, it was. I'm a nerd. I love movies.
I mean, I got a Zelda text message.
The text message is
talking about name drop. We were like, Back to the Future,
well,
Zelda.
That's fine. Everybody knows that. Back to the Future text, and then I've got my ringtone is like from the Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr., like the violin music that they play, like that hard kind of Irish. I don't know how to describe it. I think it's like the Dubliners or something. I'm not sure. That's name dropping.
Mine dings.
Your dings. Yours dings.
When I get a text, it ding,
ding.
Yep.
Ding. Preza done.
Holy crap! Here comes Jesus. Oh, Family Guy.
He doesn't look too happy.
So just for the fun of it, right before you got here, I had pulled up. I just looked up on YouTube Air Force basic training and watched the video, and it was
pretty sure that's called a vacation.
They made it look like it.
I'll go get some Alan.
They made it look like it. It was different. It was somewhat educational, but I think the most interesting part to me is the fact that everybody goes through the same place for Air Force basic training. I think that's just because in the Army, you could go to basic training any number of places.
Really? It's like 5, right?
So we have 2.
Yeah, San Diego and
Paris Island.
Yeah. You also talked about
the Navy, I think, only has one.
I think Navy only has Chicago. There's a place up in Chicago. I think that's where around the Chicago area.
Okay.
I think that's where they do their Navy boot camp.
Yeah, they train on the lakes.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I think Fort Leonard Wood is primarily focused on OSIT, which is basic training and advanced training combined. Not a big deal.
That's how Pendleton is. So Pendleton, you've got MCR, whatever, Marine Corps Recruit Depot. for anyone, west of the Mississippi. And then you have, I think that's like its own separate base. I'm not sure. I didn't train out there, so I don't know. Because, I'm not a Hollywood Marine. I'm just, for any Hollywood Marines listening, and talk shit all you want.
What's the difference? I understand why you call them that.
There's just this, there's always been this kind of, it's the same exact training.
Yeah.
It's not like you go to, Paris Island and you get more physical training or more, classroom training than you would at, it's the exact same training.
Yeah.
I guess
it's just kind of the shit talking that goes on.
It's imagine training in San Diego and then imagine training in a swamp. Which one do you think is going to be harder?
So the one difference I do know of is that, and I believe if memory serves. So if you're at San Diego, you go to Main Side to do like your rifle training. So you go to Camp Pendleton, to do your rifle range training. Right. So you actually get to leave and see like other people. Like you're not isolated. Whereas if you're on Paris Island, there's the bridge and everything. You go onto that bridge and you don't come off until you've either quit or you've become a Marine. Like that's those, and you don't see anyone else. Like the closest I got to seeing other people at Paris Island was where my barracks were. You could look out across the bay and see Hilton Head. And you'd be like, oh, there's some random girl getting plowed by a dude she doesn't even know. But they were just lights off in the distance. And you would just be like, oh, that's civilian world over there. And
instead
I'm
of like
here.
Constellations where it's like Greek mythology, it's just some random.
Oh yeah, we would make stories up just like randomly. Like right now, there's a chick over there just boning some dude. He is just a gross
His name's
human being.
Chad.
Yeah,
her name's Kelly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There would be backstories. You get really creative because you do this at night and you just be so stressed out. This was just kind of like a humorous release for you. You just be like, oh, that's what I'm going to do. This is my TV. This is how I'm reading books.
You guys are out there.
Yeah. We are.
So how many weeks is basic training for Marines?
3 months. I think it's like.
Was that like 12 weeks somewhere in there?
It's like 12 weeks, I think. 12, 15 weeks, something like that. I can't remember. Dude, it was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But you go for like 3 months.
Yeah.
So there are 3 phases. You show up. Boot camp was an experience.
Yeah.
So you show up. Everybody's seeing like the boot camp, documentaries and everything. And they do it both at Paris Island and at Camp Pendleton or San Diego. You show up in this like bus or van, depending on, how you're getting there. No one's dropping you off. And so like you're wearing your clothes. So like my recruiter was like, don't pack anything. Don't bring an overnight bag. Because they're going to take all your shit.
Not your cell phone, not your favorite book.
I gave my dad my wallet.
That's what I was telling him. I was like, in the Air Force, they threw away all our clothes.
No, they didn't throw them away.
Everything. They threw away our toothbrush, our underwear, our
they
deodorant.
bagged all that shit up for us. Like we put it into like a giant, like they gave us this like giant brown bag. And on that first night, they were like, strip down, here's your new uniforms. And we stripped down everything we had and we put it in this bag and like we labeled it like however they told us to label it. And then they took it and stored it. And we didn't see it again until...
You got it back?
Yeah, we got it back.
They threw our shit
we got
away.
it back.
Yeah, we got it back.
We put it in a bag and then...
Nice shit. So they're like, oh, you don't need this. This is gross. You'll get nicer shit now.
I guess.
I don't know.
I was kind of just pissed off because I just like... It was in March and I was like... I just got my birthday like clothes, and I had my new sweater and shit, and they're just tossed it, and I was like, "You sons of bitches!" And the recruiter didn't say anything about that. I think my recruiter was on drugs because he acted like he never went through basic before, and I was like, "What the fuck? How do you not know anything about this?" It was a long time ago,
I mean, there were parts of boot camp I'll never forget. Like I'll never forget the first day, like showing up. So when you show up, there are these two at Paris Island anyway. There's 2 giant, huge double doors, and there's steps, and then there's like these white or these yellow footprints, and then the bus kind of pulls up next to those. And when you pull up, there's like drill instructors standing on the steps at like the very best. And like this is the middle of the night. Like you don't show up at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
You always show up in the middle.
Yeah, you
of
show up in the middle of the night. I don't know if that was only us.
No, it's always everything.
Is it everything?
Yeah.
I think mine was probably 1 a.m. or 2 a.m.
Mine was
somewhere
like,
in there.
Yeah, mine was like
that's weird.
Like around 1.
How do they do that?
Just to confuse you, like just to kind of. That's what I think. But these are not my drill instructors. These aren't the people who are going to take me through training. These are just kind of the people who are going to indock me for the next week. So they come running onto one of them comes running onto the bus. And at first, like this is your first experience. You think these guys are yelling at you because you're like, oh, this is what being a drill instructor.
Were they in their dress uniform
they
or
were
were they in their
camos?
camos?
Chucks. They were in their Charlies.
What?
Their service Charlies.
So it's like a dress uniform, but without the jacket and it was short sleeves
with the open collar and the green pants and then the big DI hat, which is the big
round brown
thing.
And you come running in with that.
Yeah, he just comes. He's walking at I don't know if you call it running, but it's definitely not walking.
Power walking.
He is walking with intensity. That's what I'll say. Like he is moving with a purpose. And he comes up and he's talking. Like when he comes on, he is very intense. And when he talks to you, and it almost seems like he's yelling at you. And you learn real fast after you go through boot camp. That guy wasn't actually yelling. That's just how he talks. Because then you get your drill instructors and you learn what yelling.
Oh, that's yelling.
Oh, this is what yelling is like in the Marine Corps. This guy wasn't in my face right here flinging spit at me. He was backed off and he was just telling us what to do. And so basically he comes on and he says, when I give you the order, you're going to go outside, you're going to find yellow footprints to stand on, you're going to stand there. And then he goes, go. And he's like standing on a seat yelling at you while this is where the yelling starts. He's like, get off the bus, get off. And then as you run out, the other drill instructors now have run down the steps and are like forcing you to get basically nut to butt on these footprints. Like they don't want any gaps and they're just, get up here, move here. And you're just like, oh shit, what's going on? And that's kind of how you get indoctrinated into boot camp.
Shark attack.
Yeah. It's intense because you've never.
I feel like it's a jackal and a lion kind of thing. Like they send the jackal out to raise up the kill, and then the pride comes and gets the kill.
Well, these guys. So the drill instructors you have, I think it was like for like your first 4 or 5 days, are just kind of your admin people. They're making sure all your paperwork's there. They're making sure you've gotten to your uniforms. They're making sure you've gotten to your squad base.
Air Force.
Yeah, and then you run the IST, which is the initial strength test, and then you come back from that, and that's where you meet your drill instructors.
Your
and
initial
that's
strength test.
Huh?
Your initial strength test. That's like a regular PT test.
Yeah, it's a PT test, but it's not like the PFT. It's the minimum requirement so that they can build you up to get to the minimum requirements of the PFT.
Okay.
I can't remember what it was like. You had to run like a mile and a half and do like 1 pull up or something and like 20 crunches.
No.
That was like it was bare bones minimum.
Really?
Yeah. And then
it was like ours was like a mile and a half, but if you couldn't do 59 push-ups, you weren't in.
Yeah.
If you couldn't do 59 sit-ups, you weren't in. You had to do it.
No, if you couldn't do it, they sent you to like another platoon.
Would you get recycled?
Yeah, you get recycled until you could pass it.
Holy crap.
And so you would go to this other platoon and there you would just you could run.
We called it the pork chop.
Yeah, everybody called it the pork chop platoon. And then you'd run that.
No, like in the Air Force.
All they would do is just make you work out.
3 tries. It was like
You said 59 push-ups, 59 sit-ups.
Right. It was like you couldn't do it the first time.
I don't know what it is
get
now.
Recycled.
How long do you have?
1 minute.
1 minute to do 59 push-ups?
Yeah. And 59 sit-ups.
I ain't joining the Air Force.
The
Army's was a 2-2-2, the PT test. So it's 2 minutes of push-ups, 2 minutes of sit-ups, 2 mile run. Yeah, so when we did the assessment, it was 1-1-1.
Yeah, so we did, everything was cut in half. So you had to do like just to get into boot camp, you had to do 1 pull up, you had to run like a mile and a half in like I want to say like 12 or 13 minutes, something like that.
1 mile in 12 minutes?
1.5 miles. Like 12.
Yeah, ours is
and
about 12:46.
It's like 12 minutes, I want to say.
That's weird. Why do they do 1.5?
I don't know. Well, because it's half a 3. Because your
Oh,
PFT
okay.
is a 3-mile run. And you have to do so. And when you get graded on your PFT, you get different scoring. So there's first class PFT, there's second class PFT, there's third class, and then there's failure.
Yeah.
And so then you have 2 minutes to do. I can't remember the amount of crunches because like everybody when I remember being in the fleet, everybody was doing like 100 crunches, which was like the maximum crunches you could do.
Yeah.
Like you did 100 crunches in like a minute. You were like, I'm just going to lay here for the next minute while everybody else finishes up. Because there's no point in doing 101 unless I'm trying for like the Iron Man. And most guys were like, man, fuck that. I ain't doing that shit.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I will say, like, being in the Air Force today, like, they lowered the numbers so significantly. Like, it's a joke to do, like, the push-ups and a joke to do the sit-ups. A lot of people still struggle with the run, but they measure your waistline now. And that's where a lot of people fail, is on their waistline. Because if you're at, like, 36.5-inch waist, they fail you. And you think, like, well, that's not no big deal. But they, like, start from here. They go under and then they hold it down here and then they come over it. Like, I got a pretty modest waist.
We didn't have uniform standards until like the end of my because like our PFT, like because we were so physical, because we were doing PFT. You had to do a PFT, I think, every 3 months. Something like that. And then, but like the rest of the time, you were. I mean, every morning you'd get up and you were PTing at like 4 or 5 every morning for like at minimum an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I don't know how those drill instructors at 30-something years old, their knees can still keep up with them like that.
Dude, I served with a guy. So he and I both kind of joined around the same time. And he ended up re-enlisting and going to be a DI. And I was like, that makes sense. Because that dude was like, he was probably like, airball. Dude, you weren't even close on that one.
I was kind of. No,
you weren't.
Continue.
But this dude was like straight. He was probably around 175, 200 pounds, but he had like 0% body fat. Like he was just a jacked shithouse. And when he was like, yeah, I'm going to go DI school and become a DI, I was like, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, that checks out.
That checks out.
Dude, I would have done that shit coming back from Germany, but they were like, we're not taking male E5s right now. Well, and I'm like, damn it.
Do your DIs like sound, do they have like, so we had what's called the frog voice.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do it.
I'm sure they learn it in school. I never got to go through school.
Like, but it's really loud and like their veins pop out.
Yeah.
And they just talk, but they talk like that, even when they're not screaming at you. Like if you're in like a classroom setting and you're learning whatever it is you're learning that day.
It's just like
it just depends. Because we had a drill sergeant in my first training unit because I broke my leg, so I got recycled. So I was in basic training for 7 months. Yeah, 7 or 8 months. Anyways, well, it was OSIT too, so it would have been 21 weeks no matter what. But I broke my leg, got recycled. The first training unit I was in before I broke my leg, we had Drill Sergeant Powell. Okay, so this man, I want to say he was a reservist, and so apparently, if you're a reservist, obviously you have the 1 weekend, 2 weeks a year whole deal. But if you want to get AGR type benefits, you can just volunteer to be a drill sergeant your entire career. So he was a drill sergeant for 20 some odd years. I was like, this man is insane.
To be a drill instructor.
But well, no, I mean, obviously he kept re-enlisting and eventually hit in def.
Oh, okay.
But instead of being a reservist where he sits at home and sells cars and then goes into drill once every month or something like that, he was just a drill sergeant. That was his full-time job.
Oh, wow.
As an AGR?
That was just a billet you got.
But he did that for 20 years?
He was at 22 years when I went through basic training. The reason I bring him up is because
he whooped your ass. Nothing bothered this man. Some drill sergeants, like, you forget something or you do something wrong and they lose their shit. Nope. This man, and I mean, everybody was still fucking scared of him because he would smoke the dog shit out of you, but he was always same tone of voice,
same even keel
Yeah.
all throughout, even if he was making you do push-ups.
So we had 3.
What did he sound like?
Yeah,
He sounded like a 22-year-old drill sergeant.
Was it like that's
or-
1 push-up, 2 push-up, 3 push-up, 4 push-up? Oh, you forgot your eye wash today. Was it like really monotone?
No, he wasn't monotone, but he was the guy. We would be in formation, and of course, normally in order to release everyone, you would say fall out. And he had had enough, so he was going to do whatever he wanted to do. So he's like, poof.
Yeah, they used
Be
to
gone.
do that to us, but that didn't come until the fleet. You'd be sitting in the fleet, and you'd be talking with your like first sergeant or your gunnery sergeant in like a school circle, and they'd be like, they'd just be going over whatever they had, and then they'd be like, all right, that's it, done. The officers would be like dismissed, and you would have to do, or they'd say, hey, when we give the order, fall out and form school circle, and fall out, and you run up, do your thing. But like drill instructors, we had 3 drill instructors. I don't know how many guys you had.
1.
So we had 3. So we had the senior, and the senior was kind of like the daddy. He was not really the intense one. He would let the other drill instructors like do whatever they needed to do to smoke you. And when he thought it was enough, he would like kind of reel them back. But he really wasn't the one that was like, it was very rare for him to come out and be like, oh, good, I'm going to fuck you up because I can. That was a rarity. He was kind of the boss of the other guys. And he was the one giving you like the instruction on this is how you drill. Like this is what these. Then we had what's called the heavy, which is the guy who's like, I guess, training to become a senior DI. Like he's like the number 2 in the level. And so he's kind of this mix between the senior and the other guy, which was called the kill hat. And the kill hat was just the dude whose job was just to smoke you as much as he possibly could, whenever he possibly, like, he brought very little to the table training wise. Like, he's not really doing a whole lot for teaching you knowledge or, marching you or doing any of that. His job is just to go up and down the line and like, oh, you're not standing the way you should be. Come with me. I'm going to go, we're going to the pit. And he'd disappear with like 3 or 4 recruits. He'd come back. He'd pull out 4 or 5 more recruits, go back to the pit, smoke it. Like, that's all he was doing. So he was the one no one ever wanted to see. But he was like the ninja. So he would be walking around. You had like, if you were standing practicing drill in like the parade deck, and your rifle wasn't like X amount of inches away, he'd come be like, oh, good, you don't want to, do port arms, right? Come with me. And he would just pull you out of formation, and you'd go running off, and he would just, get on your face right now and just start smoking. And he was just like, you never knew, because you were so focused on what the other drill instructors was telling you and following the orders, you had no idea where this guy was. And like one of my kill hat's favorite thing was he would love to come up behind you if you were standing at attention with no rifle or something, and if your hand wasn't like in that fist by your side or like flush up against your side, he'd just come up and just smack you, like just smack the hand. And he'd be like, "Get that hand!" Like you'd be like, "Oh shit!" Like you're there. I had no idea you were
Surprise.
there. Like, so he was always in the shadows.
That was closer.
Remind me never to play basketball with you two.
So, yeah, like
that would never happen. That would literally never happen with me.
It might happen with me. I'm
terrible at basketball. I'll admit, I am not coordinated or graceful.
So, like in Air Force, it's like there is these 2. It was the kill hat and it was the senior, like you were saying. And then we'd have them for the first 2 weeks, and then we'd get our actual MTI. And apparently the guy that was the kill hat, he was brand new. He did not know what the hell he was doing. And you could tell. He was there as soon as we got there. And then the senior, of course, we had to come in, and the senior was the one that eventually came to being the kill hat. And it was not fun. I think for like 4 hours one day, we had to hold our arms like that when you're doing your dress right dress. And like that. And somebody just kept on smacking their legs like that. So for hours upon hours upon hours, we just had to hold our arms like that. And it was screaming. It was just like, you're just like, oh, God.
The favorite game that they made us play was we had to take our M16s and put the front sight posts on our finger and hold them straight out. And just stand. Like, that was a favorite punishment. Like, when it was like just the heavier the senior, like if we, like at night or something, if we were doing something we weren't supposed to or whatever, like, oh, come up here. You just stand there like this. And like within 45 seconds, like, it's like you'd be like, hold it up, or I'm gonna fuck you up. Like, he would tell you, like, he would be screaming at you, like, oh good, and he would walk away and go do something else, and he'd turn around and you just hear him scream like, get that gun up! And you're like, ah! Like, they could make paper clips feel heavy. Like, they would do that with anything, like whatever they had at hand. It was like, okay, good. Well, I'm going to punish you for doing this.
Toilet seats are like this.
No.
That's not how they're supposed to be. How are they supposed to be? Like this. Exactly. Now, how were they? And they'd leave. 2 hours later, you'd just be sweating, just like, oh, fucking God.
Yeah, we had lots of fun.
Oh, man.
That's what we call them. The favorite game the drill instructors played was the run this way, run that way. You guys ever have that? You know what I'm talking about? So they pull someone out, someone who did something like, so there's 3 phases in boot camp. Phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 1, no one can ever do anything right. So you're just getting
You said in boot camp?
Yeah.
So, okay. So with us, because basic training, like I said, it was OSIT, so we had 5 phases, but basic training still had 3. So it was red, white, and blue. And we had the guide on matched the color.
No. So how you knew what phase different recruits were was by their pants. So phase 1, you normally, for the first part of phase 1, you wear Go Fasters. Yeah, that's right. I still remember them, which were tennis shoes, and you cupped your cami. So you cupped them like that, like you didn't blouse you. You weren't allowed to.
I wonder if the Army got that from Marines, because when I was going through basic, they started doing that with what we called the spaceships, the new barracks.
Yeah, no,
people in ACUs.
That was kind of like, so you didn't have your.
He said Go Fasters.
Yeah, they're Go Fasters. So that's what boot camp is. You learn the terminology. So boot camp in the Marines is like you learn the basics of being a Marine.
Yeah.
You don't learn anything special. You learn the basics. You learn the history. You learn how to shoot. You learn how to march.
The song, right? There's a song?
Yeah, the hymn, the Marine Corps.
All right. Just wanted to make sure.
You learn like the Rifleman's Creed. And every Marine, regardless of what your MOS is, has to go through that. But boot camp for us was, this is just you learning to be a Marine. This isn't you learning how to, like, go and be like hardcore fighter. That'll come later.
Yeah.
You'll get basics on like hand-to-hand combat, but like real basic. You won't get more than what you get at boot camp until you go into training. So you go phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is where the DIs are just fucking.
Yep.
You can't do shit right. You don't know anything. Doesn't matter if you do it right or not. You're still just going to find a reason to go. Second phase is where we kind of go off to the rifle range for most of the second phase. And now there's the expectation of you've been here for a month already, you know kind of what is expected of you. And they're still crushing you. They're still making you PT, but like now they're kind of pointing out where you're going. Instead of just being like, oh, you didn't do that right, come with me. Now they're like, oh, you didn't do that right because now you can. And then third phase is where you get into like doing more of the infantry stuff, where you get like the basics, like this is how you how you do DWT or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Where you go out to a course for a few days, like go crawl in the mud of your life.
Yeah.
And then that pretty much third phase is preparing you for crucible. And then you do the crucible. And then
that's very similar to the Army. The number one difference, I think, is where we have the guide on, which identifies what phase you're in. Sorry, I guess I should say had. when I went through basic, we talked about this last time. When I went through basic, we had the guide on red, white, and blue. Red phase is hell. Oh, you're breathing wrong. Do push-ups till I get tired.
Yeah.
And when we march, there was no cadence. It was left, right, left to get to where we're going, and that was it. In white phase, they started
Judy's or something. Started singing Judy's or something.
I don't know what that means, but in white phase, we were allowed to
motor run, where you're like repeating what.
Well, that would be like the run. So we didn't do a ton of.
We didn't do that until
we didn't do it
family day.
Yeah,
we didn't do a formation run until like family day.
We didn't do a ton of formation runs or group running was really ability based. Like Alpha Bravo Charlie group runs. But we didn't do any cadence calling during running. During marching in white phase, we were allowed to start repeating back cadences. So the drill sergeant started to sing the cadence, we would repeat it back. And then what would happen is during white phase and or blue phase, even because we were OSIT, we also had black and gold phase after. Because remember, advanced training, we weren't for the Marines, once they were done at Paris Island or San Diego, they came to Leonard Wood to go through the MP school.
So they had another phase of training between that.
Yeah.
So they had to go to MCT. Marine Combat Training. So depending on what your MOS is, you're either going to go to Marine Combat Training, which is where you get the basic rifleman course. Because every Marine's a rifleman. So you go and you learn the basics of being an infantryman. Hey, you made
once.
But you learned like the basics, like the just nitty gritty, and then when you graduated from there, you went to your MOS school, which would be
so MCT
school.
Is after basic.
Mm-hmm. So you would go through boot camp, and then you go to MCT if you were a non-infantry MOS. If you were an infantry MOS, you went to was it ITB, Infantry Training Battalion, which is where you did your basic MCT course, which was like 3 or 4 weeks. I can't remember. And then the next like 6 weeks, you were focused in on whatever your MOS was, whether it was rifleman, machine gunner, mortarman, assaultman. So if you were like a mortarman, after your MCT was done, you were still at the same school, still in the same platoon, but now you got like to go learn how to deal with like shooting mortars and doing all of that. Same with machine gunners and infantry guys.
That's crazy. So that's why we always saw them, like we would go to get our haircuts or whatever, and there's Marines and or like we're on pass or whatever. Marines are in uniform. They're standing around. They're not being followed by drill sergeants. They're not being forced to stand in lines. And we're like, what?
Yeah,
and that's because they were already passed.
Yeah,
they had already done the first part. Ours was OSIT, so it was like we had the same drill sergeants, the same unit, the same everything from day 0 of basic training through graduation of MP school. So you ran the Crucible, which is like the culminating event. Do you want one of mine?
Hell yeah.
Ours tastes like shit.
Yeah, it's Bud Light. It's pretty much piss in a can.
I mean, if you drink enough, you still get drunk. So,
yeah, that's going to take me like a case and a half.
Actually, I think they actually made Bud Light stronger recently because it was at like 2.8 and then it was like 3.2. I just recently looked on the can and it was like 4.2.
Bud Light is great. Budweiser, Bud Light. The only like generic beer I'll drink is Banquet. Coors Banquet.
Ugh.
Yeah.
You fucking nasty. Do you drink your Coors Banquet with a box of crayons?
Dude, first of all, you don't drink crayons. You eat those fuckers.
I know. That's why I said you.
It's a great
you
pairing.
Drink
yes,
them
it's a great
with.
It's a great pairing.
It's a great
have
really, brings the Banquet brings out the wax.
Did I tell you
a flavor orange with a Coors Banquet?
It's delicious.
Did I tell you about the company in California, Crayons Ready to Eat?
No.
They're it's chocolate. I think it's white chocolate.
Oh, damn.
But it comes in what it resembles an MRE bag, but it's crayons
Christmas
ready
just
to
happened.
eat.
Go ahead and buy that for me for a late Christmas gift.
I was going to, but they're working, so they had to wait to get FDA approval before they could ship, and now they got it. So I'm waiting on
2 for 2, baby.
Nobody
2 for 2.
cares.
I think it's a little bit fucked
Nobody
up.
cares. When you make it, you're supposed to make it. So nobody cares about that.
They have to wait for FDA approval for the MREs, but they don't have to wait for the FDA approval to give us the COVID vaccine. I'm scheduled to get the COVID vaccine here next week, and I'm a little bit salty about it.
That's exciting. So if he's not here next week, we know why.
He's a zombie.
So
Damn
whenever
right.
they start shipping, I'll probably get them, because I'm probably going to get them for all my Marine friends. So I feel like it's fitting. But yeah, so the biggest threat in basic training, because obviously with having the training mushed together like that, you could get to black or even gold phase. And if somebody screws up bad enough, they threaten to take you back to red phase. And that happened on occasion. They would take your guide on, whatever color it was, take it off, put the red guide on back on. And, you know, no more cadence calling. Everybody like staying up late, waking up even earlier for PT, like very, very strict. Stand in line, shut up,
Right.
you know, do what you're supposed to. But what's funny about it is in black or gold phase, people like me or a couple of my friends, the drill sergeant would be like, you're going back to red phase. And we're like, all right. So if we're smoking and joking and we're not supposed to be, we should probably stop. But some of the other people who had experienced red phase would freak out. So now they're on the verge of crying tears for the threat of
Getting dropped or something.
a color.
Back. Yeah.
The color of the flag.
We didn't have that. So
That's Pavlov's dog right there.
it is.
Like
To make a grown man cry because of a
I
color.
think the other thing was because each phase, at least in basic, was 3 weeks long, because basic training is 9 weeks long. So I think the other thing was during red phase, you don't get any phone calls.
We weren't allowed a single phone. So from the time you got onto the island, you were allowed one phone call, and that was that first night.
Yeah.
And you went, and this is the craziest thing. So I had friends who had gone through boot camp before me, and they kind of explained to me what to expect on the first day. And they were like, you need to tell whoever it is you're going to call that first night what to expect, and here's what to expect. So when you come in, so you do your whole thing on the yellow footprint.
There's a script, isn't there?
There's a script.
Fuck yeah.
So you walk into this room, you fill out some paperwork, and then the drill instructor, like once everybody's done with the paperwork, they tell you, they're like, hey, you're going to go into this room over here, and you're going to form lines behind all of the phone banks. There's like, I think there's 20 or 30 phones. But they're like those like emergency looking phones, like that are just boxed. You know what I'm talking about? So you form your line, and they give you kind of the rules. They're like, all right, this is what's going to happen. The drill instructor will stand there, and he'll like open the box up, and there's a script painted on or taped onto the inside of the box. And
Ours was epoxied on there.
yeah, ours
Onto
was like,
laminate.
yeah, it was like glued or something. I don't know. It was stuck on there, and they're like, this is what you say. You are not talking to whoever you're calling. This is what you say, and when you're done saying it, you hang up. That's it. They don't get it. Like, you're not talking to them. And I remember the one rule someone asked was like, what happens? Because they're like, at this point, we're still saying I and me, because we weren't allowed to say that in boot camp. We had to say this recruit. There was no individual terms. You always, like, when you were being addressed.
It was like trainee Mazza reports as ordered.
Yeah, so
trainee,
you would have to say like this recruit.
whatever, reports as ordered.
But so people were still asking I at this point because they're still trying to get used to it. We'd only been on the island for like a few hours. And somebody that I was getting indocked with asked, was like, what if I don't have anyone to call? And the drill instructor just goes, fucking call the operator and tell him. Like, that's who you're going to, but you will talk to somebody. Like, if you've got to press 0 and only talk to the operator, that's who you're going to fucking talk to.
Could you imagine being that operator and being like,
I'm
this
sure that
poor
operator
fucking kid doesn't have anyone to call?
Well, they wouldn't let you.
It wasn't in the script.
They would not let you leave a message. So they said someone had to be. So it's like you called your mom, your dad, your girlfriend, and nobody picked up. You couldn't leave a message because you couldn't stand there and wait.
Actually, I did leave a message.
We weren't
They
allowed
would
to.
let me leave a message.
We weren't allowed to. Like,
And I
you'd be
was
standing
so
there.
glad I got to leave a message because my dad would have picked up the phone and he would have been like, what the fuck? This ain't my kid.
Yeah. No, I told my
He would have
mom-
got me in trouble. I would have got smoked because of him.
I told my mom what to expect because my buddy who I'd gone to high school with had joined the Marines about like 8 months or so before I did, about maybe a year. I can't remember, but he had told me, he's like, "This is what's going to happen."
So he's friend, but not a real friend.
Oh no, he's a friend. He's like, he kind of was like, you need to be prepared for what you're about to get yourself into. And he was a reservist. He was a reservist comm guy. So the shitty thing for him was he had to go to school for like 6 months out in 29 Palms, which is like the worst place in the fucking world.
I've heard rumors.
It's 29 Stumps. It's fucking awful. I've been there twice. So
Why did they call it 29 Palms?
Because when you drive into main side, into the main gate, there are palm trees.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess palm trees are prevalent out there because it's in the middle of the desert, the Mojave Desert. And it's like this is what I know. This is what my buddy used to tell me. It's the largest Marine Corps base in the world, which is true. Like 500, 600 square miles of a base in the middle of the desert. It's huge. But there's only like 10 square miles of living area. And the rest of it is free fire zone. So this is where we go and do all of our like combined arms training, like where infantry units will go and they will do ranges that involve artillery and tanks and air support, and they will be shooting live fire at the same time. It's insane.
So it sounds like 29 Palms is similar to Fort Polk's JRTC or Fort Irwin's NTC. Like a training area, just massive.
It's just a massive. I mean, I would think it would be like where the tanks at Fort Knox, where the tanks all go, right? That's where they have those big tank ranges out there, right? It's kind of like that. Like they're just massive ranges. Like we would train with live tank. Like we would do a range where we would like go and shoot live rounds in a combat town with Ivan targets, which are the ones that pop up and go down when you shoot them.
I know Ivan.
And so the mission for this range would be like, we are escorting tanks through this town, and then tanks will go to the other side of the town and do whatever it is they have to do.
Yeah.
And so what would happen is, and this was the first time I had ever dealt with this, the tanks would be like rolling through like the streets of this like combat. And it's not a big, when I say town, I mean, it's not like a city. It's like a few Connex boxes with like windows covered. And there's like 20 of them.
I'm telling you, JRTC.
Yeah. But they would roll, like you would have to go through and like room clear these towns and then like mark where you were moving so that the tanks could see where you were. And as you moved up through the town, the tanks would kind of follow. And then once you got to the edge of town, the tanks would then push past and then they would start shooting their cannons at whatever the fuck they were shooting at downrange. And I was literally behind this little wall and there was a tank on the other side. He's just launching his big can. And we're like sitting there just like, boom. We're like, holy shit, should we be farther away? Like, what's going on? Nope, we train like we fight, and this is how we fight. Like,
no, you're good.
You're good. And we're like, well, I'm gonna go deaf. Like that's what's happening. But yeah, so that's 29 Palms. But
so is that pre-deployment training?
Yeah, that's pre-deployment training. So you have to go to 29 Palms and do. It used to be called CAX, then they changed it to
Cox.
No, CAX. Thank you. Well, you like, we know where your Air Force mind is. We understand. Yeah, I think it stood for like Combined Arms Combat something or another.
Systems services.
Yeah. And then they changed it to Mojave Viper. And I don't know what they call it these days.
HP.
No, you don't. Nope. When you're as an infantry unit, so you don't go to main side and see like people. They have Camp Wilson out at 29 Palms, which is literally these metal like huts that a whole platoon can fit into.
Wow. And
they're like, you're going to sleep here for one night, and then the rest of the time, for the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we're going to be here. You're going to be out in the desert sleeping. And so we're just going to be moving from range to range and doing different ranges.
No.
And we're going to build. So you're going to go from squad size ranges. We're going to do platoon size ranges. We're going to do company level size ranges. And then we're going to do battalion size ranges.
No.
You're just kind of like, holy shit. And they are like range. I can't remember. There's one that's like over 1 kilometer long.
So I got to ask you this question.
Fucking,
when you're out
nuts.
there, like practicing or whatever, do they make you shave every day?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We had to shave every morning The only time I was told we did not have to shave was in Afghanistan, because for a little bit of time in Afghanistan, and I'm not talking about for the whole deployment, they were like, you're going to literally get 2 bottles of water in MRE until we can like catch up.
Yeah.
And so those 2 bottles of water, it's more important for you to ingest it, because we weren't allowed to shave using the local canals. They're like, you don't have, but that was like for like 2 or 3 days.
I feel like
go on an op,
yeah,
and all you would have is the water you could take down. So they would just be like, for this op, we're going to be out for 5-6 days. You're not going to shave.
Yeah.
No.
I feel like if we were in that scenario, then my unit, they would have done something similar, you know, water limited. You need to ingest it because we want you to live. So you drink the water, but when it comes to shaving, you can dry shave.
Yeah,
so shut up, Buttercup, and get to raking your face. Yeah, that's how my unit was. So I could see how that makes sense. Like, oh, we want to conserve water. So.
Well, they were just there were so many worries that if you were just dry shave in like Afghanistan, I guess if you like cut yourself dry shave, which you're gonna do dry shaving.
Oh yeah.
It's you could stand to get a massive infection.
Nice.
And then you'd be combat ineffective. Just as if you were just shaving with like local water, right? Because the water there wasn't great.
And you cut yourself, the same thing would happen.
The same thing would happen. So they would just say,
give you no iodine? We put iodine in there, and they were like, well, risk it for the biscuit, motherfucker.
No, they wouldn't give us that. They'd just say, here's your 2 bottles or your 3 bottles for the op. And we're just not going to shave. Like,
I'm telling you, man.
You don't have time. When you're doing an op like that, you really don't have time to shave. When you're doing an op, like you're getting very little sleep. You're moving at night from building to building or village to village or whatever the fuck it is your op is. And, you're out, and most of the time, at least one squad in that op is getting engaged by the Taliban. So you'd go into like a little compound, and you'd set up like a snap patrol base. And then from that patrol base, every squad would go out at different times. And then at least one of those squads was getting in a tick. So it was like, you really, like, in the rest of the time, like the squads that were staying back, one was on QRF detail, which is when they would sleep. And the other squad would be like just standing up over a wall with their M16s and 240s. And that was essentially our post. And then you'd pack up out of that compound, you move to the next. But these ops were like, that wasn't like the entire deployment for us. It was a handful of days.
Yeah.
You'd walk somewhere or get a helo insert in the middle of the night, and you'd be in this area, like where there were like 4 or 5 villages spread out, and you'd be in that area for like 5 or 6 days. You come back to your bigger patrol base, which is where you had a little more luxury.
Well,
and you'd run patrols out of there for a couple of months, and then you'd go do another op, or another platoon would go do another op.
I think I got super lucky. I mean, I talked about that before because I only went to Iraq.
Iraq was like, compared to Afghanistan for me, Iraq was a cakewalk.
Yeah.
Iraq was like going to a resort. Because when I went to Iraq, it was the end of essentially combat operations. Like, we went in the middle of my deployment, we went from going on patrols and doing convoys to handing over Al Anbar province back to the Iraqis.
Yeah.
And our mission just became, hey, Iraqis, if you need us, we're here at these bases. Call us, we'll come help you. But like, you now have been trained. You've got this. So like, I can remember guys in Iraq where they'd be like, we would do 6 on, 6 off, or 6 on. There was like a squad and a half in my TCB, which is our TCP, which was tactical control point, like a squad and a half. So we would do 6 on. We had 3 posts. You'd stand post for 6 hours, and then you'd have like 18 hours off.
Nice.
And then those 18 hours, you could PT. We had like a little makeshift weight room. We had a full-on kitchen where we had like a microwave and toaster oven. We were getting regular resupplies of like American convenience food, like microwave, like Hot Pockets and like Cinnabons and chips and shit. We had a refrigerator in there, so we would just keep it stocked with like Gatorade and milk and shit. And then like we had a phone that we could use whenever we wanted to call home.
Yeah.
And that was my Iraq deployment. Like, there was very little going on, especially towards the second half. Like, you'd go out on a patrol every once in a while, but most of the time you just worked out. I had buddies who would be like, oh, I'm just going to go like lay out on top of the Connex boxes and like get a suntan. Right, cool. And then Afghanistan was completely different.
Yeah.
Afghanistan was a 180 of that for me.
I mean, I didn't go, but I had friends in Germany and went to Afghanistan, and because I deployed to Iraq, we got back, and then I went to Germany, and when I was in Germany, that line unit over there deployed to Afghanistan, and I was like, oh yeah, deployment, in my head, it's one thing, and I'm thinking like, for water in Iraq, we would have a pallet delivered.
Yep.
And it was under the LSS.
Yeah, we had a big thing that was filled up that we gravity fed for a shower.
Yep.
So we actually had like a big like a rain head shower type, so you could shower whenever you wanted. And Afghanistan, all of that changed. Like when I went to Afghanistan, I was like, oh, I've been on deployment before. I know what to expect. I was thinking I'm going to have like nice, big, comfortable living, conditions. I was going to, none of that shit happened. I showed up to Afghanistan. And once we left Leatherneck, I was on the Advan party.
Yeah.
And once we went down to where we were, I looked around. I was like, this is definitely like day one when we rolled into where we were.
Were you at that time?
I was a Lance. I was a terminal Lance. Leave for life, son. I actually the day I EAS was the day they mailed me my promotion warrant to corporal. I was like, you sons of bitches. I was a shitbag though, so I was like, I didn't care. I was like, whatever. Like I EAS'd on January 29th or whatever.
Lance is E4, right?
Private PFC E3.
E3?
It's an E3.
Okay.
And then, so I EAS'd on like the 29th, and on the 1st, I got a promotion to corporal. That's the following month.
Well, congratulations.
I was like,
man.
oh, this is awesome. I just like threw it in the box with the rest of my shit. I was like, I don't give a shit. Like, I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But yeah, so I was, Afghanistan was completely one.
Yeah. That's crazy, man.
Like we had one satellite phone for all the platoons that were out in patrol bases around the company area.
Yeah.
So like I would have like one platoon would be a kilometer north of the company area. Another platoon would be like 600 meters to the like west. My platoon and first platoon were were like a click and a half south.
Yeah.
And so we had this huge AO, and they were just like, your job is just to go find the Taliban and push them out of the area and take ground. I'm like, okay, cool. Wasn't like Iraq. We're like, we're going to train these, lovely Iraqi people, tops there. Nope, they were like, because I came in at Afghanistan at the beginning of the surge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So yeah, that was 2009.
Okay.
So it was like right as they were like, so when I came up from Iraq, the first couple of months, we thought we were going to go on a MEU. And I was stoked about that. I was like, I'm going to go sit on a ship, pull it, do some training in Africa with locals in Africa or whatever, and that'll suck. But I'm going to pull into like Spain and Naples, maybe go to Seychelles and just like have liberty and be able to go off and like fuck around.
No big deal.
Like, yeah, it's like I'm going to go on a cruise. Like, this is what I'm gonna do. Like, it's a shitty.
Is that what it's like for a Marine on a Navy ship?
Well, from what other guys who had told me who had been on a MEU, that was the interpretation. Like, you had shitty living conditions.
Yeah.
But like, you did training on the boats, and then like you would do most of the time on the MEU, there was nothing for Marines to do.
Yeah. And
so they would just go, work out, and then they go back to their racks. And if they could line up some sort of training, they would. But really, they would pull into different areas, ports, or they'd pull offshore somewhere, and they would find, and you'd go do training. Womp, womp, womp.
You would think because we're sitting here killing these, like we would get better.
Do you?
I haven't missed yet. I haven't missed yet, so I'm pretty happy.
All right, we're proud of you. But making it is what you're supposed to do. So when Marines are on a Navy ship, they're like, because I can imagine being Navy watching the Marines on a boat. I don't, those lucky fuckers, man.
I don't know what it's like. Like I heard stories. But I never went on a MEU.
Okay.
you know, my corpsman used to tell me, he'd be like, yo, if you ever go onto a MEU.
What was the main purpose?
So Marines are the force in readiness. So we're the units that don't take an act of Congress to go into somewhere. Right. So that's why we guard embassies. And so we can be, I think we can be anywhere in the world within an event happening. You can have an infantry battalion on the ground anywhere in the world within 6 hours. Anywhere.
Just readiness.
Yeah, it's the force in readiness. So if
so when you talk about this MEU, like that's going on a boat.
Yeah.
How many Marines would be on that boat?
You'd have, well, I don't know how, like, depending on the size of the boat.
Okay.
So you'd have a battalion that would be part of, let's say, the Mediterranean fleet.
Okay.
So that battalion would be separated onto different ships. You wouldn't have the entire...
So it's literally like, we need to make sure that if something pops off here, we have enough Marines.
In region of the world.
Your unit, ready, set, go.
Yeah, so you have the PAC MEUs, you have Mediterranean MEUs, and those are all separated by different regions of where they are. So if it's like a Atlantic MEU or a Med MEU, you may go up and float around in the Med, and then come out and either go down the Suez Canal and around Africa. You may come back out of the Strait of Gibraltar and go back the other side of Africa, or sail down towards like South America. PAC MEUs would go to like, I don't know where the fuck they would go. They go to like Japan and like float around Japan, like near the Philippines.
Singapore.
And then you'd go into like the Indian Ocean or wherever. Like I don't know how they kind of separate. So there's like the 20 something, like the 21st MEU, 22nd MEU, 23rd MEU, 24th MEU, 25th MEU. And so if you were scheduled to go on a MEU as a battalion, you'd be like, hey, we're going to have, tanks attached to us. We're going to have artillery attached to us. So like these guys would go on the MEU with you. And you would just all kind of be off on different ships, and you would do training, and you would pull into different ports at different times. And so, like, if I was in one company, from what I understand, and this again is what I heard, like, if you were on one company, you would be on like one ship as a company. And that ship at a certain time would pull into a certain port, and they'd be like, hey, you can go have liberty from, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. or whatever. Like they just let everybody off the ship, and you can go do whatever and come back, and you'd be in that port for however many days, and then you'd come back out and you'd go somewhere else. And then maybe they'd say, hey, we're going to go do training with people in this country.
Yeah.
Like we're going to pull, we're in Spain, we're going to go to Italy, and we're going to train with, our Italian partners or, wherever.
Yeah.
So you do that, and basically you'd be on call. Like if something happened, like, let's say you're in the Mediterranean and Algiers and Tunisia decided we're going to just duke it out. Yeah. And for whatever reason, the U.S. was like, we have a vested interest in preventing this from happening. Or like the UN said, we don't need this to happen or whatever. Yeah. Then the Marines could get the phone call from the White House to say, hey, we need you to put your battalion into Tunisia to defend Tunisia. And they could say, okay. And then boom, you'd have a battalion of Marines on the ground within 6 hours, like in force.
Nice.
And they could hold the position until other Marines or forces came. And it could be like a MEU, I think you train for like 50 something different types of missions, from evacuating embassies to peacekeeping to disaster relief, to invading a country if a war pops off. Whereas if you're doing a deployment like I did for like Iraq or Afghanistan, it's like cut down to like 10 missions. Yeah. You don't have to worry about all this other shit because you're not going to be on a MEU. Yeah. You're going to fly direct into this country and go fight this war.
Yeah. That's crazy. It sounds very similar to when I got to Fort Hood, we did something called DSURF, which was basically if Katrina happened again in the United States, then we would be able to deploy. I want to say the original time frame when we first started the mission was 72 hours, and the second year we were on it, because they would go through cycles, and somehow we won the second cycle. Yay, we get to do it again. It was like 24 hours. boots on ground, and that's vehicles going to the railhead, getting sent wherever they need to go.
Oh no, I
That's
mean our
weapons.
vehicles and stuff would be on the ships with us.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about worldwide, though.
Yeah,
Ours
so,
is was probably just like U.S.
Yeah.
based, and then when we went to Camp Atterbury in Indiana to train, there were Marines up there involved. There were civilian organizations, there were volunteer organizations, all coming together to train. But it was a lot of like health and welfare type stuff.
Yeah, we had. Well, so from what I was told, Muse would get training in that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Like if you were if you were scheduled to go out on a Mew, you would be trained and
It's possible that's why they were there.
And, yeah, I mean, you could do any number of things on it. Again, I don't know because I never did a workup for a Mew.
Yeah.
When we came home, we got told we were going to go on a med float on our next deployment, and then I think it was like a month, maybe a month and a half after we got back from Iraq, they were like, "Yeah, JK, we're going to Afghanistan." And we're leaving.
Thanks, guys.
Like I was home for less than a month or less than a year from Iraq to Afghanistan.
Dude, me and the guys down there at Fort Hood, like a lot of them, we would have bent over backwards to do that because the Camp Atterbury, the DSURF rotation was a lot of the military's hurry up and wait. So we would do drills to make sure we could be ready in time because when it was 72 hours, we would have to report to our unit with our bags packed, ready to leave in like 1 hour.
Yeah, I have no idea how
they would do one. They would do 1 hour recalls. So,
did you guys have anything ready in the Air Force?
Well, we are completely different. Not because military branches.
Because you're called the Chair Force. We get it.
See, I'm a mechanic. You have to be so specially qualified in so many different areas. Like, can you work on a C-130? Can you work on a C-17? If I was to ask you to switch over and do this in-flight itinerary research on a bomber or an F or on a F whatever, fighters, attack planes, whatever it was, I'm just like, I'm not going to go do my research on the combat. I'm going to go do my research on the aircraft. And there's been plenty of times when there's an aircraft that's had a malfunction that's came out and it was wrong and they needed the most specialized person that was in the vicinity that would come out there and research the problem. And usually I was that guy. I get engines, I get how right makes it tight, left makes it loose. What a
righty
fucking
tighty, lefty loosey, son.
So I was just a mechanic, So when you talk about going out and doing 6 on, 6 off, 6 on, or 18 off, or things like that, I'm like, well, that wasn't my MOS. My MOS was going out there and knowing so much about an aircraft, knowing the power dynamics, where's the thrift, the luff, the lift, the drag, things like that. That's where I spent my last 10 years.
So that sounds painful because the infantry, we didn't have that much intelligence training. We didn't have to. There wasn't a lot of schooling, schoolwork for us. It was well, let's come out of this end. He's over there. That's where you want to put this end pointing towards.
I love to read.
Front towards enemy.
Front towards enemy.
Front towards enemy.
I read and read and read and read and
we
read
had
and
to
read.
read. Actually, there was we had the commandant's reading book lists that we had to read from. I had when we got told we were going to Afghanistan, our company commander was you've got to read Bear Came Down the Mountain, which was we had to read 2 books. I can't remember what they were. I think one was called Bear Went Down the Mountain, which is I think the Soviet version of the Afghanistan war between the Soviets and the Mujahideen. And then the other book was called The Other Side of the Mountain, which was the other point of view.
Yeah.
And we had to read both of those.
That's interesting.
Because we had to kind of understand what had happened. Then we get to Afghanistan, I was well, that's all part of
mandatory reading for the Marine Corps used to be The Art of War. I think.
Oh no, we still had to read that.
You had to read that.
We still had to read that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was mandatory reading for us as well.
I think everybody has. It's not a long book or a complicated book. It's a 100-page book.
Well, I will say complicated is one way. It's written in a dialect and written in a way that it's very easy to interpret.
Yeah.
But like Confucius Analects, man.
We had like cliff notes and shit.
Yeah.
Like we would like read it. We were like,
it's so intense. Like I will say Confucius Analects and The Art of War, like the two easiest reads, but
3 for 3.
It's
literally
so
nobody
intense.
cares.
I do. Hashtag winning.
Anyways, when we walked into that dojo the other day,
Yeah.
and he was talking about being at war at all times, and that's what the art of war teaches you. And having to read that already, like I have a copy of The Art of War at all times. I actually got it in my Jeep outside.
Yeah.
It's like I only have like certain books that I keep with me wherever I go. It's like The Art of the War, the Bible, the Quran, the Tanakh, and The Giving Tree, because that's my favorite book of all times. I don't care if it is a book for like 7-year-olds or 10-year-olds. It's a small book, but it's so profound, you know. Anyways, The Art of War changed, and it continues to change in me in my interpretation of it. And when we do this little podcast, and I hear what you guys go through, because you had a completely different MOS than I did. Like your job was pretty much to go out there, neutralize a threat. My job was to be like, these are the ones, like in the Air Force. The Air Force are like the tanks of the sky or something like that. And so if I wanted to make sure that I did my job right, my job was to be like, nothing can fuck with these motherfuckers in the air, so let's make them bulletproof. And that was my job. Where you were to put the bullets in, my job was to be like, nobody can even put a bullet in this thing.
I read a story one time about a guy that was an Air Force mechanic, and he said I think he was an Air Force mechanic during maybe one of the world wars. And he said he killed a ton of the enemies. Just tore them down, but he also had terrible friendly fire. Killed a
blue on blue.
Yeah, ton of pilots, ton of passengers. And somebody asked what he did, and he said, "I was an airplane mechanic."
Well, like World War II, I think so I'm big into history. I love reading history books. And,
nice. That's good because I'm not. So
and you can look this up on Google. But the 7th Army Air Corps had the highest casualty rate of any unit in the U.S. Armed Services during World War II. So they lost more people than any other division in the Pacific or Atlantic
There was
Theater.
no Air Force during World War II.
Yeah, it was the Army Air Corps.
It was only Army Air Corps. And the Army Air Corps actually started in World War I, where aircraft pilots actually had to get their start up in France. And then from there, Pope Army Airfield by itself, then it turned into Pope Army Air Force Base, was one of the biggest pilots, like where they would produce pilots. But everything started in France for the Air Force. And then in 1947, 2 years after the war, that's where the Air Force got their start. But
yeah, so it was the 8th. So I had to look it up because I was like, I read this somewhere. The 8th Army Air Corps suffered more than 47,000 casualties, which is
correct.
insane.
Well, you got to remember that they didn't have ILSs and IDLSs in their planes at that time. That means they had no instruments. They had no beacons.
Well, they also had
things like that.
They were also flying in those like giant like formations where they would like send up,
and they would fight at night too.
Yeah,
and
they would send up like 500 planes carrying like 10 guys each in these formations.
Yeah,
and they would just get half of them get shot
and
down.
the troops from the ground, the Marines and the Army, everything like that, they would be firing up, thinking, you know, this just
That's
fucking
insane.
hit something.
You know, I read a lot of books on World, and I've, you know, seen a lot of documentaries on World War II, and I'm like, as a guy who's seen combat, I'm like, I have no idea how these guys did. Like, I've, like, coming from a dude who's been like, oh, I'm going on patrol knowing I'm about to get shot at, and like knowing how freaked out that made me. Like, how these dudes got into landing craft or something. You know what I mean? Like, where they got into like landing craft, they're like, we're going to go hit this beachhead that's, you know, and like you can see, like, you can look up and see like the dudes who came before you just like getting the shit shot out of them.
Down.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, this is where I'm going.
Can
like,
you think of
I
like
couldn't imagine that.
Normandy Beach? You know, like when they came down, it was just like, you were covered in blood and skulls. You knew you were just a number of to take a bullet. You know,
Yeah, fuck that. Like, I would like, nope, get me off this boat. I'm done. Like, I'm good. Jesus,
those men right there, like that courage, that bravery.
Yeah, I think every war has that. Like, so like Vietnam.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know, like the guys in Nam, like you had for the Marines, you had Khe Sanh, you had Wei.
So even the Korean War, Korean War
you
was
had
crazy.
Chosun. I mean, the guys at Chosun. I just read a book about a month ago about a company of Marines from 2-5.
What was it?
2-5 or 2-7.
What was the book called?
Last Stand of Fox Company, I think.
Okay.
It was written back in like the 80s or something.
Yeah.
But it was like a company of Marines went and like kind of held this hill that was like kind of the main, it was like in the middle of the main connection between two different Marine forces.
Yeah.
So you had like Marines down at Haganu, and then I can't remember the name of the place that they were further north, but it was in it was Chosun.
Yeah.
They were in and so they were like holding this hill because it was a vital artery, and these like 200 Marines got attacked like 10,000 enemy over like a 4-day period or 5-day period. Like suffered like 60% casualties. And then they had to march out. Like that's how they evacuated, was they had to literally walk from there for another however many days to safety.
Yeah.
I was like, when I read that, I was like, Jesus. Fuck, man.
Makes you feel like you took Afghanistan for granted.
Oh, yeah. Fuck, man. Like guys at Khe Sanh, I think they were surrounded for like 60, 70 something days, just getting artillery shelled. Like the only like indirect fire I ever had was like random, and it wasn't ever really that close.
Yeah.
Like you'd hear like an artillery, like a.
You got lucky.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, but you were, because in part in Iraq, because I'm thinking about Iraq, it's in part because of where you were. Because we were on one of the largest bases, if not the largest base in Iraq. So they were always like, how can we fuck these guys up?
Launchers on timers and shit, and then they'd leave.
Yeah.
And then those timers would go off and the rockets would launch, and you may have a rocket fall within your wire. You may.
Yeah.
Like if it got lucky enough, because they weren't aiming these things. I can remember when I was on the Advan party and we went down in Afghanistan, I can remember sitting outside the COC. I can't remember if my unit had showed up yet or not. But I can remember sitting outside the COC smoking a cigarette. And one of the guys from the unit that we were doing the rip with came out, and there's this noise, and I didn't register what this noise was. And he's looking up, looking around. He's like, he's like, get down. I'm like, why? He's like, that's a rocket. And then all of a sudden, like off in the desert, just past us, like further to our east, like by like 300-400 meters, there was like an explosion.
Yeah.
And it like had missed us by that much. And I was like, huh. Like, but that was like my indirect.
Your IDF experience is,
yeah. Like it wasn't like, you know, I was, you know, part of like the Band of Brothers guys and like the Battle of the Bulge just getting the shit shelled out of me. You know, it was.
No, I'm lucky. I didn't.
Like my brain just did not register what that noise was. This dude who had been in Afghanistan for so long knew what it was and was like. It's coming, like, it might not hit us. It may hit us. I don't know.
We don't know.
Get the fuck down.
Get the fuck down.
And all of a sudden there was an explosion, like, way off in the distance. And you're like, is that normal? Is that not normal? Like, what's going on? Like, I'm trying to learn this. He's like, yeah, that happens quite regularly. I was like, oh. And then I can't remember another time it happening for us.
Yeah, I feel like, so we were on Cropper for a month and a half because I played cage kicker for about that long until we got our real mission, as I like to say.
I love that you call it cage kicker.
But well, that's what the echoes were. That's what the echoes were. My buddy John works for the.
When you say cage kicker, I'm thinking of very specific, like.
That's exactly where my mind went.
My mind went to like Abu Ghraib.
Did you have dog leash duty and stuff?
Abu Ghraib.
That's who worked Abu Ghraib was Echoes.
Echoes. Okay.
Echoes. So my MOS was 31 Bravo. Somebody who guards a prison, who is like a prison guard, is a 31 Echo. We call them cage kickers. So
that's what they do.
The funny thing is we got to do that and much more. So I feel like most of them would have been better off going Bravo. But anyways, that's what I did for the first month and a half in Iraq. And going from Cropper over to Victory, where the large PX was with the Cinnabon and Taco Bell and, the big PX.
Deployments may vary. I get it.
Deployments may vary. But we also got the large.
Oh, he made it. Good job. High five, buddy.
Very nice.
Very nice.
The large
one. Congrats.
That was my second. That was not three.
That was this many.
It was my second.
I thought you Air Force guys were supposed to be like the
I'm starting to question.
I was just like, it came up like, I was like,
I'm starting to question who was in the Marines.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I guess I can at least count to 3.
But
can you?
I can.
I don't think you can.
I do, and that's only because I saw the Holy Grail. Love that movie.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, I'm about to make a Holy Grail reference if he doesn't.
I had to beat everyone to it.
But we got to go over to that giant PX, and you would have to take the bus, and the schedule wasn't consistent. So normally, if you went over there, you would have to schedule it like it's my day off. You'd have to go on your day off, and of course, they wanted you traveling at least with a buddy.
Battle buddy.
Yeah. So
battle buddies?
Of course.
I'm so glad that term is consistent across branches.
Oh yeah, you had to have
I'm pretty happy about that.
I had to have battle buddy.
Battle buddy.
Yeah, we actually
I don't think it's consistent across all branches.
What do you mean?
I think in the Navy it's either like your boyfriend.
That's a sweet.
That's not fair. They're not here.
Yeah. It's a sweet burn on the Navy.
Come on to Veterans Top.
They're not here yet.
They're not here yet.
Yeah.
Well, you say that to like a Navy SEAL, and you fucking get smashed for it. I'm sure.
Actually, I have a bunch of Navy SEAL friends. I met them out when I was in Keesler Air Force Base. I was staying
a bunch.
Yeah.
So like 3?
No, like I met all of SEAL Team 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, all of them?
Yeah.
Like seriously, like all of them?
All of them.
Wow.
No.
Because
I'm just saying, if somebody here knows a Navy SEAL.
I don't.
You guys
that's I mean, I whole other microphone.
So I saw them.
I would be perfectly fine being
went up and was like, "Hey,
you guys want to know something about SEAL teams? SEAL Team 1, 2, 3,
where they
4,
are
5,
and
6,
why they're not sitting right here.
The higher the number, the more insane those guys are. Like SEAL Team 1, like I met them. They're about 12, 13 guys, depending on. I didn't meet their like company commander or anything like that. But they were just like some good old country boys.
You met guys from like the different teams. You didn't meet the so like there's I think each team has like a couple of platoons. Like Team 1 has like 2 platoons or 3 platoons.
Yeah.
So that's probably 60, 70 guys, I would think.
No, not that many.
Really?
They said that their numbers never got higher than 30 usually.
Wow. I don't know anything about the SEALs. I mean, I know like they're bad. I know they're badass, and I witnessed some of their shit.
Delete that, by the way, that part.
It's live. You're screwed.
Really?
Yeah, we're live.
All right. Well, no more questions about numbers or anything.
They'll demonetize if it's an issue. But anyways, yeah.
All SF guys are badass, though.
They're all badasses, but like it seems like
I disagree.
The number.
You say SF?
Yeah.
I disagree.
Who?
So I played Op 4 for group down at Fort Polk, and they showed up, and we were supposed to play like the Haji or whatever that they trained.
Ooh, you can't say that on a social media. You can't say Haji.
And
It's true.
He said as
probably
he
can't do it.
used the word that
We used to call him, but you can't say
right. So
come on, dude. I'm gonna have to cancel you now.
Well, you're gonna cancel me again when you hear what we called him when we kept when I worked Cropper for a month and a half. But the point is that I worked Op 4 for group down there, and we just determined because we heard the conversation among them. And you're talking about like the lowest ranking person in a special forces group is probably an E6. And that's because he just got out of training. Then you're 7, and then usually there's an 8, and the 8 is like team lead or whatever. And they're sitting there holding a conversation. It's like they're just like us. The thing is, there was no pulling rank because at that point, it was outside of rank. So it wasn't like I'm the master sergeant. You have to listen to me.
Right.
It was just like, oh, you say you want to do it this way, and I want to do it this way. And we saw one of the guys get upset and frustrated to a point where the rest of the team wasn't really taking his thoughts and ideas into consideration. So he was just frustrated, and he was the senior ranking person. And that's the point where we were like, okay, so they're exactly like us with a budget.
Yeah.
Now Navy SEAL. Okay. So group, of course, I know the training they have to go through, and I have a lot of respect for those guys. So special forces, they're still, a force to be reckoned with. But I've read Dan Crenshaw's book, Fortitude, and I think that Navy SEAL training is a little above and beyond what special forces goes through.
I don't know, man. SEAL, I imagine SEAL training, Delta training, Green, even SF in the Army, Green Berets. I mean, that's got to be some like hardcore. Like, so when I went through training, like every step of the training got tougher and tougher. So when I went to boot camp, I have a buddy of mine who I lived with before we both joined the Marine Corps. It was like me, and he was one of my roommates that I lived with up in outside of Asheville. He ended up joining the Marines, but he was an admin guy.
Yeah.
And he was a reservist. And so for him, the hardest thing he did in his career was the Crucible. And I get that. Like when I did the Crucible at the time, it was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life. And then I showed up day one to infantry training, and all of that went away. Like day one of infantry training was way harder than physically. It wasn't as mentally tough. It was physically much tougher than the entire time I was at Paratime.
Yeah.
Like when I went through infantry training, I was like day one, they had us do like a 10-mile station run, which I had never done. First of all, I had never run that far ever in my life. And then they broke it up with different stations. I mean, it was a long ass fucking station run that took us a few fucking hours to do. I was like, we had to run like 5-10 miles easily. And then we're breaking it up by doing different stations. Like, we'd run for a mile or half a mile or a mile and a half or whatever it was. And then we'd stop and we would just do like 200 push-ups. And we'd get up and then we would sprint a quarter of a mile, and we'd do like pull-ups until we couldn't feel our arms. And we'd run to another state, and like it was a kick in the dick. Like you were just like, by the end of it, everybody was like, holy shit. Like, because at that point, for all of us as new Marines, like the only thing we had done was boot camp. That was the toughest physical thing we had done. And then day one of infantry training, it was like, all of that shit was meaningless, like physically. Like that was easy compared to what my first 24 hours in infantry training.
So what happened, Joe, if somebody showed up there in like, day one, week one, whatever? What happened if somebody quit? Could they quit? You couldn't quit.
Couldn't quit. So once you go through boot camp, so when you're in boot camp, you're kind of not regulated to the UCMJ. right? So you can be like, fuck you, bro.
Because you're not permanent party. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not a Marine. Like you haven't earned the title of Marine. Once you go through boot camp and you do the Crucible and you earn your Eagle, Globe, and Anchor, you are now a Marine, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you are upheld to the UCMJ. So if you go to your next level of training and are like, well, fuck this, I quit, they're gonna look at you and be like, yeah, you can, but there's gonna be punitive repercussions for you doing this. Like, you have to understand, you are not following orders. You are now beholden to the UCMJ. When you were at boot camp, you weren't. Like, you could quit boot camp.
If someone, I mean, at least for the Army, I'm sure it's cross branches. If you just give up and leave, you know, they may or may not make an example of you, but you get what's called an uncharacterized discharge, which is basically a piece of paper with a DD-214 that says he was here. No, if you go UA, at minimum, I think, if you go UA and they find you, I think at minimum it's a bad conduct. You're talking about AWOL, right? Yeah. I'm talking about if you go to your, if you go to your drill sergeant or whatever and you're like, this isn't for me. It just depends. Like, we didn't really, so once before I went through, one guy wanted to leave because he had a wife and kids, and he got his, like, I didn't ever see, so when I was at infantry training, it took so much to just earn the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor that kind of, once you did it, I think there was one guy from my boot camp class that like didn't show up. So we had a 10-day boot leave, is what it's called, 10-day boot leave. So you graduate from Parris Island or boot camp, and then you have 10 days to like go home and hang out, and then you've got to show up to your next level of training. And I had one guy that I knew of that I can remember anyways that didn't show up. Yeah. I don't know what happened to him. Like, I don't know what they did to him. Injured. Yeah, I mean, I don't. I don't know if they gave him bad conduct or they just were like, it's not going to work out. But the guys that I went through, so when you go to infantry training, and uncharacterized is literally just like it's like a placeholder discharge. So it's neither a good conduct or bad conduct discharge. It basically doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's like it's almost like it would be. It would almost be better to get a bad conduct discharge because at least it shows a history there, and uncharacterized is like bullshit. It's I don't know. Like when we showed up to, I remember going to infantry training, ITB, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be another, I think it was like 11 week course or something, 8-week course, 9, I can't remember how long it was. And just being like, because I was so used to having drill instructors, I was like, this is going to be tough. And then you show up and you get your instructors, and they are not guys like it. They're not drill instructors. They're not DIs. They're not DIs. They are not yelling at you. They are talking to you like, hey, my name is Sergeant so-and-so, and I'll be your, instructor today for this. And they're really trying to train you. So they're not trying to, all the fuck games at this point are done. No. You're getting weekends off. So like you go do training from Monday through Friday, and then Friday they're like, you're done until Monday unless you have Firewatch this week. And if you're on Firewatch, you have to be here. Schedule's posted. Right. And like they would talk to you as Marine, like you would earn the title of Marines. And so it's like, hey, you could go to them and be like, hey, Sergeant, like, my sister's in town or something for, my sister's graduating from UNCW and I'm up here in Jacksonville and she graduates, Saturday.
So you're at Camp June, huh?
Well, we're at Camp Geiger, which is just across the river.
Okay.
But like it's a stone's throw. It's still technically Jacksonville. It's just 2 different bases.
Okay. I've been but the places.
Okay. See, that's how the Army was with split ops. If you went through basic and then you went to advanced training, and I found that out because I knew some people who had different MOSs like medical or vet tech and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, I'm at advanced training in this, that, and the third. And I'm like, wait, holy shit, you guys get weekends off? Like you can just leave when you want? And they're like, yeah. Yeah, that's how it was for like, but the physical training for SOI and ITB was 1,000 times tougher than anything I did at boot camp. anything. Like like when I talked to my buddy who was admin reservist, he was like, the toughest thing I ever did was Crucible. Because he went to MCT for a few weeks and then he went to do his MOS school. And it was like, the Crucible was like the hardest thing physically for him. He was like, when I think back to my Marine Corps career, that was like the most physical thing I did. I'm like, not me. Like the Crucible on a physicality standpoint was like one of the easier things I did. Like I showed up to ITB and was like, you're going to get your dick kicked in the dirt. Like we're going to do a defense week, which is defense week in the infantry, at least in the Marines, is like, we're going to go out on a 5-day op. You're going to dig a fighting position and you're going to have blanks. And basically the instructors are going to go off into the woods and fake attack you. So you're going to do a stand 2 or a stand 1 at night and stand 2 during the day. And we're just going to probe the lines as if we were like the enemy force. And so we're just going to fuck with you and try and keep you up. So like you would be sitting there in your fighting position with another dude.
And you're like, oh man.
And he'd be like, hey man, I'm gonna grab some sleep time. And like you hike everywhere at ITB. Like everything is done through humps. Like you throw your like, hey, we're leaving at 3 a.m. on Monday morning at 03. Have your gear, we're gonna be staged out. And like you literally march to whatever range or class or whatever you're doing. And you could go out for a week, you go out for 3 days, but you are marching there. Like you've got all your shit on your back and you're like, where? I thought we'd like learn how to like do helo ops and go on treks. Like, no, that's not what infantry training is. You'll learn that shit when you get to the fleet.
God, we had such a fucking different fucking career.
Yeah.
Like your career and my career was so much.
I mean, that's pretty typical for infantry though, because Army infantry is similar, but I wasn't infantry.
Yeah.
So the MP motto is death before dismount.
Oh no. Like you learned how.
We walked a shit ton of places in basic, but eventually we learned to drive and we were like, oh shit, you got a Humvee license? Yeah, we'll fucking drive.
We didn't have weekends off. We worked 6 days a week for fucking 6 months. As aircraft mechanics, we had this new master sergeant that came in, and he was such a fucking dick. The fucking, where I was at in Pope Army Airfield, like the whole base was always like we were at a loss of manning, a loss of turnaround, a loss of like getting their AGE equipment, a loss of air flight time, or this, that, or the other. We had this one tech sergeant just got promoted.
He was a lifer. That's a lifer. That's what that is.
I'm going to tell my airmen they're going to 6 days a week. Well,
oh no, we would have revolted. We would have revolted. So
I know you would have revolted.
We would have been like,
don't think we did the same thing.
So there was when I was in the fleet, there was one day. It was between Iraq and Afghanistan. There was one day where we did what's called an admin, where we actually didn't go out to the field and do training. We did a lot of white space training back at the barracks, and it was supposed to be like a light week. We had done a lot of training, and I'll never forget. It's like we showed up Friday. We did our PT Friday, which was awesome. Like Friday PT for us was always the lightest PT day. Yeah. So like Friday PT consisted of like, we're going to go down to the beach as a platoon and play football for like 2 hours in the morning. Like we're going to run or whatever. Unless you got in trouble, then you know, that shit was kicked. Like if you had a guy in your platoon who like went out and got like a public intoxication ticket or whatever, underage drinking, or did something stupid, the entire platoon would pay for it and you wouldn't have a good PT that Friday.
Yeah, but you had that. We had a guy, this fucking master, this main master, didn't matter if you're good on your good in your workstation, good at your welding station, didn't matter. If you're good at
4 for 4.
The CNC,
congratulations.
It was just like, we're behind. So and
yeah, I mean, you guys were
Army
like
Airfield. It was actually Pope Army Air Force Base. and it turned into full farming. So this master sergeant, brand new master sergeant, had a bright idea. What we're going to do is maximize per guy. Now we'll not have the turnaround numbers as them.
Well, I think that's the difference between, like, so for infantry guys, there was no efficiency. We were trying to check boxes off to say that we had done this training so that we could deploy. Like, it wasn't like we had to keep something running. Like, we were like, we didn't, like, I didn't give a shit about logistics. Like, I didn't care that the company didn't have enough MREs or whatever, like, or the trucks that we had were breaking down. Like, if the trucks broke down, we just walked.
A certain number amount of aircraft. A certain amount of aircraft had to take army to wherever the fuck that plane go.
Yeah, we didn't.
There. Then on top of that, it's called AG, air ground equipment. These are fucking equipment generators, equipment that get people up into aircraft, things like that, right? Everything is from the 1960s on.
Oh, you're like Air Force and Army equipment are
we're just constantly welding all day long, 12 hours a day. If they didn't have the part, we would fabricate the part in our CNC machine, or we'd make it on our lathe or our drill, whatever. It was just all day working from before the sun comes up to after the sun comes down.
I can remember so I had to learn how to, in boot camp, I had to learn how to do iron sight. Like, we didn't have ACOGs, right? So we had to iron sight. So
you said in boot camp?
Yeah, in boot camp.
Yeah.
So you had to do, so we had 200, 300, and 500 yard line that we had to shoot from with iron sights.
Yard or meter?
Ooh, I remember it as being yards, but it could be meters.
We went to 300 meters. I don't know what a 500 meter would look like on iron sights.
It was you put your front sight post on the silhouette and it would disappear. Like, that's what I can tell you. And we had different positions. So like at the 200 meter, you had to do standing. At the 300 meter, you had to do kneeling and sitting. And then at 500 meter, you had to do prone. And you had to shoot iron sights. So we had iron sights when I was in boot camp.
Yeah.
When I EAS'd, when I got out of the Marines, I can remember, it wasn't long after I EAS'd out of the Marine Corps. They had made the change to say, hey, we're going to put ACOGs and make you shoot ACOGs on the rifle range at boot camp. I was like,
in boot camp?
Yeah. I was like, that's fucking bullshit. Like, I remember coming home from Iraq and having to go to the rifle range. And I was on a Pogue rifle range with like maybe 20 dudes from my company. And there was probably 300 or 400 people on this rifle range. And there was only like, I don't know, I can't remember how many, but we were in the minority on the rifle range as infantry guys. So we all had ACOGs because they had just made the rule that, hey, your TO'd weapon is what you're going to take to the rifle range. And we were on this rifle range with a bunch of Pogues, and they all had iron sights, and they were looking at us as like, why do we get iron sights and those guys get ACOGs? We're like, this is what we take to combat with us. Like, I can remember thinking, I was like, in the box. Good job. I can remember thinking like, Jesus, like, we get to go to the rifle range with ACOGs. Like, I'm like, this is cake. Like, once I BZO my ACOG, I'm Kentucky Wendying everything. Like, I'm just sitting there like, for a shot, oh, it's, the wind. Because you don't adjust an ACOG every time. You're sitting there just going, oh, the wind carried it a little to the left. So I'm going to push my chevron a little to the right. Yeah. And I'm going to squeeze another round. And boom. Okay, now I'm center mass. But apparently when I left, they had said, hey, boot camp, you can do ACOGs.
That's weird.
On the rifle range. I was like, I was like, that's fucking stupid. It's my last beer. I'm out.
That's
Until
weird
I go to the
because
bar.
yeah, that's weird because
You ain't good at the billiards table?
Fucking terrible. Fucking terrible.
that's
I've been
weird
waiting
because
for somebody that's
I actually-
especially an old oarsman or soldier that says, "Yeah, I'm gonna whoop your ass."
My buddy who was at 20, my buddy
say
at
less.
29 Pond, who was a comm guy, he was a fucking, he used to have like his own pool stick and shit. He would
Oh
Yeah.
God! When guys bring out their pool
Yeah.
stick and
break out
start
Lucille.
twisting it
Thank you, Fresh
together,
Prince.
and they're like, "Oh, I cannot wait! Look your ass
He was-
from this mediocre pool stick that I got from the bar."
He was really fucking good. I know a few guys who were really good. I'm too ADD for pool, man. I'm like,
What?
yeah.
ADD is like the perfect cure.
No, I'm like, no, I don't want to. I don't like to be inside a lot.
Yeah.
I like to be outside.
I don't like inside. Or
So if I'm
outside one way more than the other, but if it's cold outside, I'm staying inside.
If it's fucking cold, I'm like, fuck yeah, I'll take my beer. I'll take that shit outside. I'll just chat with people outside and make new friends. No, I won't. I'll probably just get pissed off.
Like, you're not an extrovert in that middle of the road.
No, I hate most people equally. I'm like, God, you're a fucking idiot. Why are you talking to me? I'm just kidding. But seriously.
that's crazy because
Ryan was an extrovert.
He's an introvert.
Me?
Introvert.
Yeah, I would think so.
Oh, he said he was a 10 on the extrovert.
You think that you're really?
Yeah. That's what he said.
you know I do face-to-face sales, right?
Yeah, I know that. But like, that's because it's your job.
But
That's what I said.
What do you
When
like
he
to
said
do?
He was a 10 to 10 extrovert. I
Not
was
getting
I didn't
paid.
expect that.
like the
What
whole
would you rather do? Would you rather go out to a bar and hang out with a bunch of look? I hate being in bars around random people. Like, I don't like it. Would you rather do that or like hang out with like 2 or 3 of your good friends here at the house?
I'm
Just
okay with
here.
both of those.
You're okay with both?
I'm okay with both of those, but the reason that I say that, the reason I say I'm an extreme extrovert is because like that's one of the reasons I set this up is because I like to talk.
I'm
very outgoing.
I like to I love to talk, but I do not like to talk around.
You don't like strangers.
Yeah, I don't know. Like until I get to know you, I'm like,
Well, there's on the last one we did, there was 187 strangers that
well, I don't care about who's listening. Fucking here that I'm having to talk.
they're
to.
not in the fucking room.
Yeah. They're not in the room. Yeah, they're not in the room. Like I don't like that. Like I don't get stage fright. It's not a stage fright issue. It's like when I'm in a bar full of people or a room full of people, I'm just constantly looking, going, okay, who is going to be the biggest threat here? Like how am I getting out of this if shit goes down? Like, what am I doing? And who's going to be the one that leads the charge for like shit going down? I hate being in like crowd. Like when I go to bars, restaurants, or whatever,
No.
I do the whole head on a swivel thing. My wife, it's always funny. My wife, when she and I go to restaurants, she'll be like, "Oh, this one has your back to the wall. Do you want to sit here?" And I'm like, I really do. Like I can't, because I'm sitting there doing this the entire time, and I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, I don't like being in large groups. It's like going to a nightclub. I'm like, you can fucking have that shit. I don't know why you'd want to do that.
No.
No, like if you are bumping into me, like if I'm standing there and people keep bumping into me, that's the quickest. Like that is the quickest way for me to get into a fight because like, and it'll be random. Someone will just bump me, and after like 4 or 5 times, the next person to do it, I'll just turn around, and just start swinging. They'll probably kick my ass.
Yeah.
Like I just start getting like I'm just like, oh my god, I'm getting pissed.
5 times right there in the fucking same place, and then like, you do it again. I hope you know. You better have better left hooks.
I won tickets when I was living in Colorado. I won tickets to a Black Crow show, which was really kind of random. Yeah, yeah. Through the bar I worked at, like it was a whole thing. So there was like a limo. We went bar hopping. We go to the show, and we're walking through like the front area, like right by the stage. Like we're walking through like where everyone's standing and like waiting. And the people I'm following, my wife is right in front of me. I almost did. No, it wasn't Counting Crows. It was Black Crows. So like she talks to angels. Still same genre of music, kinda. So I stop and I just turn and look at the stage. No one's playing at this point. I turn and look at the stage and I'm like, oh, we're like 3 rows off the stage. And this dude just pushes me. And I turn around. I'm like, hey, man. He's like, I've been standing here for 3 fucking hours. You're not standing there. It's blocking my view. And I'm like, okay.
All right.
We're doing this. Like, at that point, I was like, all right, we're doing this. So I pushed him back and I'm like, dude, I'm following these people. They stopped. I stopped. I'm not pushing her down. No. And he started yelling at me and I went loud. I started going to like, when you're in the Marine Corps, you learn a lot of cuss words and derogatory remarks that most civilians don't know.
No.
And will end an argument. And I was like looking at this dude yelling at him about how I would rip his neck off and bathe in his blood and squeal with glee. And he was just like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? And my wife had turned around at this point. She's like, holy shit, what is going on? And the dude's buddy is like, oh, and so they like step in between us. And my wife's like pushing me, and then like the other 3 dudes who I'm with from the bar are like kind of grabbing me and holding me back. And like, just calm down. Just calm down. I was like, no, fuck that. That motherfucker pushed me. I'm gonna curb stomp his testicles. Like I was on a whole nother anger level. And it's just because all because he just push me from behind. I'm like, oh, okay.
You're telling me like
I cannot be
years and years and years to control that fucking anger monster sometimes.
I cannot be. I literally like I will still occasionally get panic
when you
attacks.
Snap into it, you're just like,
that's it.
Why the fuck did you do that to me? And it's always their fault, and you're just like, I've been trying so long.
I will sit there and look and be like, I can't like. I'll have friends who be like, oh, we're going to go to this like music festival or concert that's like blah, blah, blah. And that's usually a great time. And I'm like, I'm
there's that one fucking cunt prick, cock-sucking fucking faggot that has to be like, oh.
Like, I'll go and start like getting panic attacks.
Start fucking poking
It won't even be people poking me.
Why does it happen? Why?
I went to Guttermouth in Denver, which was, I love Guttermouth, punk band. Check them out. They're awesome.
I know you're a huge fan of punk rock.
I'm a huge fan of punk rock. But I went to a Guttermouth show, and it was funny because like we're all like old, like mid 90s, late 90s punk rockers. There's very few like young kids at this show. But I can remember going to that show and like standing by the bar and just looking, and just like before the show even started, being like, starting to kind of have like a little mini panic attack about like how many people were in the area. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be hard. Like, gee, woo. All right, where are my exits? Like, what's going on? Like, cause I just don't like being around large groups of people.
Yeah.
I hate it.
I don't want a large amount.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want a small amount of people like either. That's why I kind of agree with Ryan and disagree with him. It was like you're in the middle of the pack. Yeah. No, fuck.
I've gotten a lot better about it.
Bad. But at the same point, I'm not going to go looking for it. I'm not going to not look for it. But when he said he was next, I think you might need to reassess that.
I've gotten a lot better about being in groups of people. I mean, it's been 11 years.
You always got to gotta come back.
Yeah, like I've gotten a lot. Like when I can remember first getting out of the Marines. I could not be in
nobody.
It took me a long time. Like now, I can go to like a crowded bar. I will still be like looking around, going, "All right, what's going on?" But I'm not anywhere near the. Like, all right, I've got to breathe. I've got to like, gotta center myself. Like, I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, okay, all right, I got this.
Say, like, there are certain I know that there's a lot of fireworks going off. Sound just still got.
See, yeah. So fireworks for me, I've never been like
Ryan doesn't pay no big deal. Like, we heard fireworks coming out for New Year's Eve,
like it doesn't.
and it was like
the fireworks that get me are the ones when they go off that you can feel the concussion wave hit you inside. Those are the ones that get me.
Yeah.
Every other firework I'm fine with. Every like with the kind of fireworks where they make all that, like I can hear them off in the distance and be fine. And if I can see them, I'm fine. Like, I don't have a problem if I'm like watching the rocket fly and it's a big concussion boom. I'm like, cool, like yay. But like if I'm not watching and like, so I live kind of out in the country, and I have neighbors who will spend lots and lots of money on fireworks. And I will have like some of them will go buy those big concussion waves and not tell anyone.
Yeah.
And I'll be sitting in my backyard like New Year's Eve.
We call them assholes.
Yeah. So like New Year's Eve, I'm sitting in my backyard. I'm drinking a glass of bourbon. I'm enjoying. Like, it was raining, but I have like a covered area, so I'm just sitting outside and just kind of enjoying it. And like I can hear all the fireworks off in the distance. And my neighbor launched one of those big like those big ones that you can feel inside. And I'm like, oh God, like, because once you feel it, you're like, oh Jesus, like you're like, oh, okay, like,
hold on. Let's see this.
Oh, he's got the box.
How do you think that's going to happen?
The box going against him. You're not going to.
How do you think that's going to happen?
You're not going to make it. It's not going to happen.
You're going to make it.
Oh
yes, nailed it, called it.
Oh,
fuck you, Joe.
Fuck you, buddy.
I knew he was going to make it.
How many Bud Lights are on the ground? 1, 2, 4, 5. I'm just saying.
You're like 2 feet away from the fucking bucket.
Strategery, my friend. Strategery.
Rocket surgery.
Rocket surgery. Smarts. And they say Air Force guys are smarter. Yeah. Bullshit.
SM or T.
I'm gonna make up words.
What did you think about every single word?
Oh, now we're just sounding like a bunch of stoners.
Yeah.
Oh, bro. When you think about it,
I think
it's not made up. It had to come out of somebody's fucking brain.
I think
no argument.
I think the difference between our basic trainings as a whole is very minimal from the sounds of it. At the core, because you talked about having 3 phases and I talked about having 3 phases. I think as we went on to advanced training and then like your deployment and my deployment.
Here's my argument against that. We didn't have, once you did your phone call on the box and you said, you're like, this is recruit. So first of all, we weren't allowed to use I, me, we. You weren't allowed to use, I got to move my leg. Hold on. Cricket.
Ah, God damn it.
Got in his head.
He took too much concentration.
He did. He really did. He was
like, he should have just.
There was a vein popping out.
But anyways, you were. But you were saying the phone call.
So
the script said, "Hello, this is recruit."
This is so you don't even say hello. He's like, you pick up you dial the number, and I can't remember what it says. But it was like, this is recruit so and so, recruit Smith, calling you from Paris Island. Will write you blah blah blah. Within the next week to give you my address to let you know the address, and then you hang up the phone. That's kind of like there's no talking back. And while you're doing this, DIs are, anyone who's not following that rules, DIs are like screaming at. My mom will tell you, like, so I called my mom and she was like, there were so many people screaming in the background. I was like, there was like 3 people screaming in the background. There wasn't a lot. It was 3 people. She was like, it was so loud. And I was like, well, those guys weren't following the rules and they were getting yelled at for it.
Like, this is the rules. Those are the rules. Follow the rules. No. All right. We'll yell at you.
But that is the only time that we physically heard someone else's voice from outside of Paris Island.
Yeah.
The next 3 months, you didn't. The only communication I had for the next 3 months was, or two, whatever it was, 13, 14 weeks, was letters.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
There was no. We didn't have cell phones that we could just call or blah blah blah.
Yeah. We didn't have cell phones. We had phone time.
We didn't have that.
I want to say that it didn't happen.
Like,
I feel like it wasn't once a week, but it might have been. But even if it was, like, when we called on the phone, even though it wasn't scripted, it was like, you get 30 seconds.
Yeah, you could not talk to anyone off. You could not. They cut off all communication.
No.
Other than letters. You got to write letters and you got to receive letters. And those letters came in on Sunday. You got to read them and you got to send letters on Sunday. And that was your only time to talk to people, was via handwriting a letter.
Yeah.
So there was no, like, the platoon high shooter from the rifle range, right? He may have gotten
one phone call.
He got a phone call after the results came back from the rifle range to call home for like 3 minutes.
It's like, 3 minutes.
Yeah, like he was like, hey.
I won.
Like, yeah, it was like that. Yeah, I'm the leader of the pack, so I won, and I get. But like I cannot remember anybody else calling home while we were going through training. That just did not happen. You were completely cut off from the world.
So, thinking back to, because I know you talked about when you got out, you went to school and you wanted to get in the alcohol industry. Like, what traits or skills? I can crop, no big deal.
Okay, good. Just crop. You know what? Just crop me out because I'm hideous.
I mean, in the live, like, we're fucked. I can take that down too, but right there, I can just
fuck the live version.
Yeah,
fuck it. No, sorry. What was your question?
So I'm curious, because everybody gains a portion of leadership skills in the military. So I'm curious, what do you believe that you learned in the Marines that translated into the civilian world?
Ooh.
What helped you most? What did you apply?
Kind of who I didn't want to be as a leader. Like, I had some great leadership from a small percentage of people that were in leadership positions. And I had a fuck ton of people that were like, I don't think you're a good leader.
Yeah.
And it mainly came from the officer corps. Like, I can think on my hand. Yeah, I can think on my hand of like maybe like 2 or 3 officers that I interacted with that were great leaders. And so, and then my NCO leaders and my squad leaders, NCOs, staff NCOs, I had a fair amount of great leadership there. And I had some who I was just like, God, you're a fucking idiot. Like, but the thing that I really thought made a good leader in the Marines that I've taken with me was that servant leadership, where and I mainly saw this from the officers, especially the lieutenants, the butter bars, where they would come in, and the butter bars that came in and thought they knew everything because they had a college degree. Like, I dropped out of college with 18 credits left to a bachelor's when I joined the Marines as enlisted. And I'm like, I would look at officers and go, you've literally got 18 more credits than I do. I'm like, that doesn't make you the smartest man in the fucking world.
Right.
But there were a handful of officers that I had that they would come in and they would look at the leadership that was in the platoon or in the company and go, I'm going to rely on your experience.
Yeah.
Like, ultimately, the decision is mine to do whatever, but I'm going to rely on you because you've been in the Marine Corps as a staff NCO for, 6
X
years,
number of years, yeah.
whatever. You've been in for 4 or 5 years. Like, you've seen shit that I haven't seen. You've done things and done shit that I haven't done. So they would rely especially at first, and that's how they kind of really earned respect from the enlisted guys.
Yeah.
But taking stuff from the Marine Corps, I mean, one of the things that I think I've taken from the Marine Corps in my past life is like, I went through the Marine Corps and I was not a good Marine. Like, I was a shitbag. I was a terminal lance. I was a shitbag, but I did something that not a lot of people can say they would have done.
Yeah.
And I apply that to going, I can face any problem.
Yeah.
And I can do that because no one's trying to kill me anymore.
Right.
And I'm not physically exhausted. Like, I can deal with whatever stress you throw at me. When I was in culinary school, I had a chef who looked at me and was like, you can't handle stress. You don't know what stress. You're like, you'll fold in a kitchen. And I looked at him and I was like, dude, I've been shot at. Bad day for you.
You can't handle stress.
Like, he and I had a conversation after class. And I was like, I didn't say anything, but here's what you have to understand. Bad day for you as a chef is, someone writes a bad review or doesn't like your food. Big fucking deal.
Oh no.
Yeah, like, oh God, that's terrible. Bad day for me and my, where I'm coming from. I was 3 or 4 years out of the Marine Corps at this point. I was still on IRR, and I was like, bad day for me before I came to college, before I came here to the school, was someone fucking died.
Yeah.
Like, someone was dead because of me not doing something or whatever. It's like, you're stressed. Like, yeah, you've got stress, but I handle stress in a completely different way because the stress that I've seen is 1,000 times worse than anything you've ever experienced.
Yeah.
Like, because you're in a kitchen, it's hot and it's stressful, and kitchens are an insanely and stressful environment. I'm not saying they're not. And anyone who's a chef who's listening to this is like, but no one's fucking shooting at you.
Yeah.
You're not worried about every step you're taking is going to be, I'm going to step on an IED and, that's it.
No.
So I was like, you deal with it differently than I do. I have a very dark sense of humor because of
right
what I've lived through. Like, I will laugh and joke about horrible things. And you will look at me and call me psychotic, but you haven't lived through what I've lived through.
Yeah.
So you're coming at me from a completely different path.
I think that's super important because oftentimes I talk to people and it's very similar. So I'll give you a prime example. I go out, what I do on a daily basis is business to business. I don't think you could cheat anymore.
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Touche, sir. So I go out and we go business to business, and so the elements are a factor here,
yeah.
Which to me and you is no big deal. But I'm out with this guy. We work for 3 days, middle of July, and he's like, "Oh, it's super hot. I'm sweating. It's uncomfortable. If you leave the car running when you get back in it, it's air conditioned, but then you pay the extra money in gas. If you don't leave it running, it's hot. And we're allowed to wear shorts and short sleeves." So you know what I'm saying? So like after a deployment to fucking Iraq where it's like 130 degrees,
yeah,
and you have your full uniform, and it's like if you leave your sleeves rolled up, then you might get a sunburn.
No, we cuffed them under. So the thing that what we did, and we would get yelled at because it was out of uniform regulations, which was the biggest bullshit argument ever. but we would cuff our sleeves under.
Yeah.
Like, so we would roll our sleeves like up and under, and it would kind of create this kind of wind tunnel.
Yeah.
Because our cuffs would, I don't know how it would work, but you just kind of felt cooler.
We
might be psychological, might not be, but our officers would yell and scream. I can remember walking through the city in Iraq that we were in, and they had a big giant camera that could see everything. I can remember being on patrol, and my squad leader or team leader got a radio message from like Fox 6, which was the company CO. And he was like, you better roll those motherfucking sleeves down. You are unset, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, first of all, it's like August in Iraq, and we're like looking around like, first of all, how can this motherfucker see us?
Right.
Secondly, it is fucking, like, I'm wearing a full combat load in August in Iraq. Like, it is 120 degrees on the deck. Like, it is fucking hot. And I'm on a dismounted foot patrol for 3 kilometers. Like, why the fuck are you going to tell me that cuffing my sleeves a little bit is bad? Like,
no.
And they would try and always and here was the argument I always got from like quote unquote, squared away officers. Is like,
I feel like most of it is combat readiness.
Yeah. Well, so I would get from officers is like, you don't show the discipline. You don't have the discipline and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, you do realize Chesty Puller, the greatest fucking Marine who's ever lived.
Right.
Was in his, I think it was his autobiography, explained how an officer came up to him and apologized to him for the look of his unit because his unit was so busy fighting that they weren't attaining the grooming standards.
Yeah.
And Chesty Puller was like, I don't give a shit. Like, I don't care. These guys are out, like, they're fighting. Like, I care more about them fighting than what they look like.
Yeah.
When we get back to garrison, that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
But right now they're on the front lines and they're fighting. I can't remember if it was like Korea or Incheon or wherever. He was like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like, what they look like doesn't matter about what their combat effectiveness is.
It's a super dog and pony.
Yeah.
And
when dog and pony shit.
When people can't identify it. I mean, we were not supposed to do stuff like that in Iraq. We did, but I think my point is in the civilian sector, and it's not even like, I think so many times like people hear stories like this and they're like, oh, that guy thinks he's better than me, or well, you went through that, but
shit. Like, they're like, that guy's a piece of fucking shit. I'm like, well, I kind of was. I'm not going to argue that fact.
Well, I mean, what you're saying though, Joe, is in comparison to other Marines.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like the civilian sector looking at you. They have a tendency to put veterans on a pedestal, and I mean, I see where they're coming from, but I think it deals a lot more with intestinal fortitude than it does.
I'm out of beer. I'll drink all mine.
I mean, you can have one, but I'm going to have to go to the fridge.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, this one only holds so much, so.
Was Jacob out there?
Yeah.
Will you do me a favor? Jacob, grab me a Bud Light. More. Oh, he's looking around.
Is he lost? What the fuck? In the fridge.
There was rolling template.
No. Bud Light, fridge.
Yeah, I got
He
it.
needs one. Oh, okay. Okay.
He's tracking.
Oh.
Yeah, I got it. But in this cute little movie, you can't crush a soul here before
Bullshit.
you have to go to Earth and have that done. I was like, oh, damn.
I can crush a soul. In the before and after. And
Before, during, and after.
I can crush a soul.
Oh, yeah.
I believe him.
I can. I'm not gonna
Crush
do it.
Rhymes.
I'm not gonna do it on a podcast because then everybody's gonna get crushed.
Yeah. We don't want to ruin lives. We just want to
in 2 beers, but I want to see you.
Okay. Okay.
2 souls.
All right. I forget what I was saying. So, the point is that I just think it speaks a lot more to intestinal fortitude than it does, veteran versus civilian, because someone's ability, because I worked with this guy for 3 days and he was like, "Oh, I quit. It's hot." And I'm like, "All right, you're in shorts and a fucking t-shirt."
Pickles. Jesus, you got me pickles? This is awful. Okay.
That's his beer.
I don't do pickles. No, I
do you see what I'm saying? So the civilian side, we're working sales, shorts and a t-shirt, and you're like, "Oh, it's hot, I give up." And then military side, it's like
working in the civilian world. So here's the problem for like working in the civilian world as a veteran. The problem,
I was promised 2 souls were going to be crushed.
Well, I mean, you were in the Air Force, so your soul's pretty much almost there. I don't want to make you go like commit suicide. Like
that was weak.
You're a piece of shit.
Wow, is that it?
No, I mean, I think we.
Yeah, that's all I got. That's all.
We could do it with a question. How long have you been in?
10 years.
Okay, and what was your AO during deployment?
Never was deployed.
Boom.
Okay, so I'm the only one left, so you can work on me. You didn't go to Afghanistan.
Yeah, you didn't. Yeah.
I
did. Oh God,
you were an MP, fucking mud puppy.
I mean, both of you were Pogues, so it doesn't really matter.
I believe it's pronounced Pog.
Pogues. It's pronounced Pogue.
But what does it stand for?
Person other than grunt.
Okay, so you're the best person in the room.
That's just sad. You should go kill yourselves based on that. I am not a good person or best person in any room.
No. I said best person in the room. I didn't say good. So okay. I think there's the difference. You're okay. So you're the most badass person in the room.
Not
Marine, infantry.
Nope.
Marine infantry.
I was a shitbag. Like literally, when I came home from Afghanistan, my boots went off, my skates went on. Yeah, I was like, I'm not doing shit for the next 7 months. Like my last 7 months in the Marine Corps was like, how the fuck can I get out of shit? Like that was how I play. I was like, I'm not re-enlisted.
Yeah,
I'm getting out. Like, what can I do to make sure that I don't have to go out to the field? What can I do to make sure that I don't help the next generation? I was a shitbag. Like I was
the ultimate.
I was the ultimate shitbag. Lance Cooley for life. I hold that title high. I was a shitbag. Like the best award I ever got was the good cookie, and it was the only award I got. I was like, well, I got the good cookie because I didn't get an NJP because I was smart enough to know not how to get an NJP. You drank the juice out of that,
bro.
Ballsy.
It's fucking vinegar.
Yeah, it's gross.
Oh, God. I can't even with the Marine.
I don't know what's about to happen here, but
throw it in that box.
He's gonna miss it.
It's gonna be difficult, but I'm gonna do it.
You're gonna miss it. Boom. Yes.
If he had made it, I would be celebrating, but
I was.
He missed, so I'm like, oh, that's what I expected.
I knew that was. But back to what you were saying about working and dealing with people. Okay.
I'm going back to watching that movie Soul. That's what I wanted. You guys have the 2 hours.
Yeah.
Too long. 2 hours too long.
Good job.
So I've worked in the corporate world.
So I guess I'm curious, like, with me, it was a little different because there was no seniority. So it was someone I was working with. Yeah, no. But if you're the senior to someone who doesn't have that military experience, say they're super young. What if it's their first job and they're like,
in warehousing.
Joe, this is fucking hard. What do I do?
I had corporate rules I had to follow. You can't yell and scream. You can't do it. I had guys who'd be like, "Oh, this is like the hourly associates I had working in warehouses for me across multiple companies that I've worked for. I mean, it's hard work. Like, it's physically demanding. It's hard. But they would come and be like, "Oh, and they're called Big Ass Fans. It's a company. You can look them up on Google. They're called Big Ass Fans.
Nice.
They're warehouse fans. I'd be like, oh, that, like, out of the 10 fans we have in our 500,000 square foot warehouse, one of them's not working. And so I'm getting too hot." And I'd be like, well, I'm working on that. I'm working to get that fixed. There's an electrical issue. I'm working to get a company in here to fix it or whatever. Like, I could just be like, suck it up, Buttercup. Like, I can deal with it. Like, you can't do that. My problem with coming to work in corporate world and corporate America was I always had to kind of wear a mask, like a masquerade ball, as to who I was.
No.
Because everyone knew I was a veteran. So they had these Hollywood type visions in their mind of what I've done and what I've seen and where I've been and the life I've lived. So I could never really be myself. There was also a pecking order. So there was no sounding board. So if your boss came to you and was like, "We're going to do this and this is how it's going to be," there was no kind of going being like, "Hey man, that's not really that great of an idea. If your goal is A, then instead of doing it the way you're saying, we should maybe do it this way, it'd be a lot better." There wasn't a lot of that.
Yeah.
And in the military, a lot of people think that it's officers down. And maybe it is for most of the military. My experience is guys who've been to combat, who've been there for many, many years, newer officers and newer people will look at guys who have the experience and say, "This is what our goal is. How do you think we should accomplish it?"
Yeah.
Like, ultimately, yes, the say is mine as, the butter bar or whatever. But the good officers will sit there with their staff NCO who's got, 8+ years in combat, and their squad leaders who have 4+ years in combat, and go, "Here's our mission." And the few good officers I had were really good at doing this. They would sit there and go, "This is what our mission is.
Yeah.
This is what I think we should do to accomplish said mission. What do you guys think?" And then they would kind of go and say, "Yeah, it's a great idea," or, "Hey, it's all, this part is great of this idea, but I would change these few things up." And then the officer would go, "Okay, cool. Got it. Let's do that. That sounds like a good idea." And it was more of a sounding board.
Yeah.
And in corporate America, a lot of people, first of all, it's very political, which I'm not used to.
Yeah.
I hate politics. I hate being a diplomat. The guys that were successful for me were either people that were
Air Force, Coast Guard, Army, Marine, Navy. Get this shit, everything between. And then I start over here, give me a beer.
It's all one audio input. Like, it doesn't. You just pick the mic.
I'm just having...
Do you not remember the whole Bloodhound gangs?
I think just close that door. Lieutenants, officers, leadership.
Oh, Jesus.
Sorry, I know I'm trying to get back to
no, I mean, what was I saying? Like, the good officers were always the ones that could
Yeah.
soundboard. The bad ones would, I went to college, I know what this is, I know what I'm doing, shut the fuck up, everybody.
Yeah. And I feel like that's the same, especially across branches, because I've had officers that were like, dude, when I deployed, the lieutenant, thought he had it together. I think the good thing is he worked really well with our platoon sergeant. So the good news is he didn't get anybody killed. I think the bad news is that if it was a scenario that did not involve the platoon sergeant, he was a know-it-all. So from the grand scheme of things, if we were planning a mission, we were probably good because he would work directly with the platoon sergeant, E7, 10, 15, 20 years experience. But the downside is if it was one-on-one and we're talking basic security tactics or how to load a weapon,
yeah, I mean,
he might not want to listen to us.
The good officers were always, in my opinion, so I can think of in my Afghanistan deployment, like my platoon commander was pretty fucking awesome. And he came from a Marine Corps family. Like actually, the funny thing was he was on our Advon party with me, and his older brother was a captain with the unit we were doing a rip with.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was. I think his older brother was like
insane coincidence.
Yeah, his older brother was like his older brother was like the XO of the unit that we were ripping with, and I think their dad was like a retired colonel or some shit.
Yeah.
And he was a great officer. Like he, when we first got him, I was kind of like, here's a fucking frat boy. Like that was my first impression of him. And just goes to show you can't judge a book by its cover. But pretty quickly during the workup for our Afghanistan deployment, he was, he was a really great, he was probably the best officer I ever had the pleasure of working for or working under. He came off as this cocky alpha type male, but he also was like, at sergeants and, the sergeants I have, the staff sergeant I have, all have a lot more combat experience than I do. Yeah. They've been in firefights. They've seen shit that I can't, and like, so I'm going to rely heavily on them on, kind of how to train and how to be a good officer.
Yeah.
I had another lieutenant in that platoon or in that company who was the exact opposite of that. And he was like, no one respected him. No one, like, we had to respect the rank, but we did not respect him as a person.
Yeah.
Because he was just kind of like, he was what we called a ribbon chaser. I don't know if you had that. He was in it for himself and his career. My platoon commander in Afghanistan was more about, getting his guys home and doing the job and making sure that he got everyone that he could home.
Yeah.
And if he had to make the decision to, risk someone's life, he didn't hesitate about it, but we all kind of understood it. Like, it was just kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
He wasn't a ribbon chaser. And I think that's because he came from a military family. He had people who kind of, when he went in, he kind of was like, they told him like, hey, you need to rely on these people who have experience. Because when you get dropped to a platoon, as a guy who's never seen anything or done anything, the only thing you did was training.
Yeah.
These guys have more than just training. They've got real world experience.
Yeah.
And their opinion and their experience matters.
Yeah.
And he really, I think, took that to heart. My platoon that I went to Iraq with, I didn't have an officer. I had a staff NCO who was my platoon commander. He was a staff sergeant. And which was very odd, which was incredibly odd. And I didn't like the guy. Like, personally, he and I would not be guys who would go out and grab beers.
Yeah.
Like, we were completely different, opposite people. But he and my platoon commander from Afghanistan were probably probably a handful, two of a handful of guys that could come in here right now and look at me and be like, hey, grab your gun. We're going to go invade the gates of hell. And it's just you and me.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
Like, there are other guys that were in leadership positions. Like, they come in here and try and tell me that. And I'd be like, you let me know how that goes, bro. Like, you know, like, I ain't fucking dealing with that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, the staff sergeant that I had that was in charge of Iraq, my platoon in Iraq, I would never go grab a beer with that guy. Like, he and I would not be friends. We would not, like, we wouldn't call each other just to, you know, be like, hey, what's up, buddy? Like, how you doing? Making sure your life is okay. You know,
Yeah.
Not that type of person. However, he's a guy I would follow anywhere.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, he was just a great leader. And my platoon commander in Afghanistan was kind of the same way. My company commander in Afghanistan was a careerist.
Yeah.
But he was a careerist in a sense that, like, I really do think that guy will be commandant of the Marine Corps one day.
Huh.
It wouldn't shock me if, like, in 25 years, he's, like, giving the birthday message. I'd be like, yeah, I get it. I understand it. He was much different than my company commander in Iraq. They were very, very, very different people and different officers. And yeah, I respected them both. Like, I can remember my company commander in Afghanistan when he first came to our company and took over. Like, he basically grabbed us in a school circle and was like, he took his bars off and he's like, you know, I'm tougher than anybody here. And if you don't believe it, who wants to step up and try and take me down? And there were some guys who were like, I'll do it. And they duked it out, like, right there. Like, I was like, all right, that's pretty fucking awesome. You know, my company commander in Iraq was probably the smartest guy I ever met.
Yeah.
He was just incredibly, he was not the alpha male, but he was the guy who was like, you could tell he was making 15 moves in his head to set up, you know, the end game or what. He was just much, much smarter, I think. And then I had some really great NCOs that the Marine Corps didn't think were great NCOs.
Right.
I can remember there was a platoon sergeant for another platoon in Afghanistan who was actually relieved of command because certain shit happened in that platoon. And they had a really rough deployment, compared to us. And they were 300 yards away from us.
Yeah.
But I can remember him being relieved of command because he didn't fit the quote unquote Marine Corps standard of leadership, but he was an amazing fucking leader. He was a guy who was like, you know, we're going to get this fucking done. He was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But he didn't fit the mold of what the Marine Corps thought, you know, a staff NCO or an NCO should be. And they relieved him and put in another guy, and it was like, that's fucking bullshit.
No.
That is fucking bullshit. And I knew a lot of guys in that platoon, and they all said the same thing. They were like, that's fucking stupid that happened. He was a great fucking leader. Yeah, it's weird. Like, in the Marine Corps, you've got to be a Marine 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Like it's not a career, it's a lifestyle, is what they say. And I hated that about the Marine Corps. That's what I hated. Like, I like my anonymity. I like to be able to be like, all right, I've taken the uniform off. I'm no longer, Lance Corporal. I'm just Joe. Like, this is what I am. And, I was lucky in the sense that I was stationed in Jacksonville and I grew up in Raleigh, which is an hour and a half, 2 hour drive.
Okay.
So, like, on the weekends, I'd be like, fuck this. I've seen you guys all week long. I'm driving the fuck home and not going to be in Jacksonville, North Carolina, which is one of the worst places in the world. I'm going to go the fuck home and just be me. Like, I'm going to kind of escape this life.
Yeah.
And, I had a lot of guys who didn't like that. Because they were like, oh, you shouldn't do that. I was like,
stop me.
Like, I was like, I wasn't breaking any rules, but I was like, human beings are so much more complex.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not this Marine 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And, you would see guys who would get out after 4 years who served honorably, who were great Marines, much better than I was. And they would do 4 years and get out, and they would be ostracized, kind of because they decided to only do 4 years.
Yeah.
Like, once you do...
Very much so.
Yeah, once you get to a certain point, I think this is any branch, once you get to a certain point, it's like, anyone who gets out before you decided to get out is kind of like, oh, what, you think you're better than me? Like, that's fucking bullshit. I can remember I went to one IRR muster. One. And it was like 3 months before I EOS'd, which was insane. It was the only IRR muster I was ordered to go to. It was in Westminster in Colorado. And I had to go up there. And I can remember going to this place, and there are a bunch of fucking staff NCOs and officers, and like high-ranking people, like staff sergeants, gunnery sergeants, captains, majors, lieutenant colonels.
Yeah.
And they are just ridiculing people for, like, just, being Marines, just, making fun of people. That's what we do.
Right.
But I remember I had this one staff sergeant. I'm standing there and my sleeves are rolled up and I've got my tattoo, and he's like, does your unit have fucking pictures of that? And he's a staff sergeant who's got like 3 ribbons. And I'm like, I just wanted to look at him and be like, you're a boot staff sergeant. You're a fucking reservist who's probably been in for 12 years. And having absolutely zero respect for that guy. Like, just looking at him. But he's yelling at me. He's like, do they have, do you have pictures and blah, blah, blah? I was like, no, staff sergeant. There's no, as far as I know, no one took pictures of my tattoos. I'm like, well, that's against the regulations. And I just looked at him and was like, well, staff sergeant, when I was in the Marines, I'm a month and a half, 2 months, whatever it is, from getting, like, being done. But when I was in, there were 2 wars going on. My unit was more worried about being ready to carry on the fight. Like, that's what they were. And he was just like, that's bullshit. That's just no discipline. I'm like, not my problem, dude. Like, not my fucking problem.
Yeah.
And I was just like I saw one dude getting blasted because he showed up on his motorcycle and he had like chaps on and he had like he looked like I mean, he was a biker, but he looked like an outlaw. Like, he was, I don't know if he was a 1%er, but he was trying to portray that. And I'm like, there's a group of Marines around him, all in uniform, just like looking at his chaps and laughing and shit. I'm like, that dude probably did 3 combat deployments, has been shot at more times and lost people, and the 5 people that are standing around him laughing at him are desk jockeys. Go fuck yourself. I mean, it's just a good old boys club once you get to a certain rank. Like, it's just a good old boys club. Like, I think got to fit a certain, like a certain kind of picture.
Yeah.
And if you don't fit that picture, then you're a fucking shitbag.
I think it depends on who you are and what you do. And as well. We definitely had that guy. His favorite thing was motorcycles. I got to the unit about the same time he was getting out. So Terminal Lance in the Army, for us, it was E4 Mafia because you were specialist. Specialist was the automatic promotion you could get to before you had to go to boards and attend certain leadership schools and stuff like that. And so he basically decided that he had achieved what he was going to achieve before he decided to pursue other things. One of those, if I'm not mistaken, because I follow him on Facebook, was like touring the country on motorcycle in one way or another. I know in his garage, he had at one point taken apart his motorcycle and put it back together for no other reason than to just repaint it or, you know, do a different style. And it was crazy, man, because he had a crank motorcycle, like you would step on the fucking pedal to fucking crank that thing. And what was crazy about it is that was his thing. That was his passion. He grew a beard. He got out, you know, he toured the country on the motorcycle, and it was very similar. You know, the chain of command frowned upon that to a certain extent, but at the same time, he was just
never understood that though.
Like, he just wasn't a lifer. And I mean, the same goes for me, dude, because I was in for 10 years. Like, I was a lifer up to a certain point, and at the point where I was getting out, anybody who was getting out, whether they were kicked out or leaving, whether it was ETS, which is the same as EAS, it was just...
For us, there was a difference between getting kicked out and just making the decision to leave. Like but
it didn't matter. It didn't matter, because if you were just making the decision to leave, you were still a shitbag.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, 100%.
That's what I'm saying.
Like that's
so. It's
awful.
Like whether you were a shitbag because you decide to leave, or you're a shitbag because you did something to get kicked out of the military. You're a shitbag.
Yeah,
yep.
That's terrible. Like, so I went into the Marine Corps. Like, I met so many guys who had different reasons for going. Like, I knew guys who did it because it's what their dad did and their granddad and blah blah blah. I knew guys who were from New York and this or Pennsylvania, or like, you know, really wanted to avenge 9/11. I had other guys who, like, my brother died in Fallujah, and so, like, when I graduated high school, I joined, like, because I want to avenge him. Like, I knew guys who were just like, I'm from, like, South Central or the South Side of Chicago, or like the worst areas that you can think of, and it was either this or join a gang. I knew guys who, you know, there's a million different reasons why people join. A million different. And I can remember being like, for me, I joined because I was bored. I joined much later, so I joined at 22, and like, I knew, like, for me, it was just I wasn't being patriotic or anything like that. I was like, I just want to see if I can do it. Like, I just want to test myself. I want to see if I can handle it. I want to see, you know. And so when I went in, I knew, like, before I even went to boot camp, I was like, I'm only doing 4 years. Like, I'm not doing 20, 25 years. But when you kind of announce that to, like, I remember getting to the fleet and being like, I had a staff NCO, just a random staff NCO, is like, you know, he was already talking to me about re-enlisting. Like, he wasn't even in charge of my re-enlistment, which was kind of crazy. He was just trying to sell re-enlistment to me. I was like, no, dude, like, I'm
good.
I'm doing this. Like, if I wanted to be a careerist or whatever, I'd do something like really crazy specialized. Like, I'd go into, like, snipers and try and be in sniper school if I could do it, or I would go into special forces or recon if I can do that. And I probably would not. Well, actually, I know I would not have succeeded in those schools because it's so hard. And I just wasn't the personality to fit in with those places. But I was just kind of in the Marine Corps for, like, just testing myself, just to see if I, you know. I was like, no, I'm doing my 4 years and I'm getting out. And like people started treating me like a piece of shit because of that. Because they started treating me like a piece of shit because I had already less than 1 year in just kind of said, I'm only here for 4 years unless I'm ordered to come back. Like if I can get out after 4, I'm getting out after 4.
That's crazy.
They started treating me like a piece of shit. So I was like, all right, fine, I'll be a piece of shit. I'll test the envelope. I don't give a shit. Like, this is not my career. But that was kind of the thing was like, when you do your 4 and you do honorable and you serve your time and you do your job, it doesn't matter. Like, if you get out after 4 years, the higher ups would be like, you're a shitbag. Yeah. What the fuck am I a shitbag for doing 4 years? Yeah. Why? I did my time. I did it honorably. I served, I did what I was trained to do and how I was trained to do it. And, I got other things I want to do with my life. Why does this make me a piece of shit? I never understood that. Yeah. I never understood that mentality. And I know that a lot of people in different branches have that. I know that's not just a Marine thing. That's an
definitely
Army thing, a Navy thing.
Definitely.
And I'm like, why? Like,
it's interesting, man, because a lot of people don't know and don't understand that there's 7 different types of discharges. Mm-hmm. For example, when I enlisted, I thought there was honorable and dishonorable. So it was like, you either serve your time and you get out and there's honorable, or you serve your time and something happens and you get kicked out for dishonorable. And what I come to find out is with the 7 different types, it's like, depending on what you choose to do. So getting out and getting banned from some type of job or something, they make people like you who chose to serve a certain number of years. I'm
an honorable discharged veteran. Like but it's not under honorable condition. Like, so here's the really, really crappy thing. I know a guy who lost all 4 limbs and was medically retired. And
all 4 what?
Limbs.
Oh,
he lost both arms and both legs.
Yeah.
Stepped on an IED. And I didn't know this until that happened and he was medically retired. But if you're medically retired, apparently it's under honorable conditions, which is not a bad thing.
Right.
It's just not an honorable discharge. And I'm like, holy shit, how fucked up is that? Like, and he was one of those guys who was going to be a career guy. I honestly, in my heart of hearts, believes he was going to re-enlist. And he got medically separated, which means he got under honorable conditions. Yeah. And I was like, that's dicked up. Like, that is real. Like, I should get under honorable conditions. Right. I'd never got in trouble. That guy fucking stepped on an IED and got blown the fuck up and, lost, most of his fucking body and has to deal with living a life like that. Yeah. And he was going to be the guy that was going to re-enlist, I think. I honestly do think he would have re-enlisted. And he got medically separated, which meant under honorable conditions. And I was like, how the fuck is that okay? Yeah. Like, because he couldn't re-enlist, he doesn't get an honorable discharge? Like, that was... Like, why does he get that? I knew another guy who got shot in the leg and got the same thing. He was medically separated. Well, he had the choice. And he was like, well, I can't be in the infantry anymore, and I'm just going to leave. And he got, I don't know if he got honorable or under honorable condition, which are like the best 2 to get. Yeah. I was like... But when I heard that about him, about the guy who was the amputee, I was like, how the fuck can you not give him an honorable discharge? Like, how does he get something less than that?
That's crazy.
That's nuts. Like, that's where
that's nuts, because I didn't know that was the thing. Yeah. Like,
if you get medically, from what I was told, if you get medically separated, that is, it's considered under honorable conditions. Yeah. Because you're not serving out your contract. And I'm like, and I may be completely wrong, and there may be people listening to this who's like,
there may be extenuating circumstances. Who knows?
That will make me feel a whole hell of a lot better and maybe not make me so disgruntled. Yeah. But when I heard that, I mean, I was like, oh, how was that? Yeah. Because I was told that. I was like,
100%.
I was like, what kind of fucking sense does that make?
Yeah.
like he's not serving not because he doesn't want to, but because he physically can't anymore. Like he's like, and if he could, he would be the type of dude to be like, I can still do this, and would be that guy who'd be like, I'm going to go run a Spartan race with, you know, no arms and no legs, and still fucking make all, like, he makes me look like a giant piece of shit.
Yeah.
So I heard that, and like I was like, that can't, like, and I had like a lot of people tell me that, and I'm like, that can't be true.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, dude, it is. Like, if you get medically separated, this is what it is.
Yeah.
And I was like, he still gets all the same benefits.
Yep.
He still gets his 100% benefit package, and, you know, gets paid for
I think it just depends, but at the same time, like, there is an appeals process. So if somebody gets out for general under honorable conditions and they want an honorable discharge, they can appeal it. And that somebody in his scenario, like, it's still fucked up, but I feel like if he appealed it, they would be like,
I don't know if it's 100% true that that's what happened. Like, I need to make sure that's clear. Again, this is what I was told.
Yeah.
Like, I was told that he got under honor, which is the same as an honorable discharge, but since he didn't fully serve his contract or able to serve the full 8 years, that's kind of what they said. The government says is it's under, medical discharge is under honorable conditions. So if anyone's listening to this and they're like, no, that's bullshit, it's, you still get an honorable discharge.
Yeah.
I hope that's the case, and I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just going off of what I had, 15, 20 guys tell me.
Yeah, definitely.
And I was like, Jesus Christ.
I've seen it. I've seen failure to meet standards. I've seen all different kinds of stuff, but it's like,
you have honorable, honorable, other than honorable, bad conduct, and then dishonorable.
And uncharacterized.
I didn't know you had uncharacterized.
Uncharacterized is literally a nothing discharge. It's like I said, if you go to basic training, you leave the second day, they give you a piece of paper that says, Well,
so I was always told that just doesn't count.
It doesn't count, but they still have to give you a piece of paper because you signed a contract.
Like, I was told, like, bad conduct and like dishonorable or like equivalent to felonies.
Dishonorable, I believe, is.
I was told because bad conduct was too.
Bad conduct, I'm not 100%. Dishonorable, I mean, bad conduct more than likely, because I was an MP, so the whole purpose of it, the whole idea behind that is it goes
like 3 DUIs or something in a 4-year span. That's like a bad conduct discharge.
Well, if it goes to a court martial, because court martial translates into the civilian world,
right? So, so bad conduct is like pleading, you, like going to a court case and pleading out. So like you've gotten 2 DUIs, you get your third, and you're just kind of like, they're like, we're just going to give you a bad conduct, reduction in rank, forfeiture of pay. You're not going to get any benefits. You still don't get any benefits, but you don't get, I guess, the stigma of being dishonorable.
Yeah.
But I heard it was like pretty much one and the same. One is like they offer it to you. The other one is like it's forced upon.
Yeah.
That's how it was explained.
I think it just depends. I think a lot of dishonorables come out with they serve jail time one way or another.
And bad conducts don't serve any jail time. They just go. You just get right the fuck out.
Yeah.
Like that's just part of your plea. Like it's a plea deal. Type thing. Like, oh well, you fuck this goat, but we're not going to put you on trial for it, but we are going to kick you the fuck out.
That's one way of putting it. I was in Durham. I met a guy and I talked to him, and he was like, "Hey, do you know where I can get employment? This, that, and the third." And I found out he was a veteran, and I was like, "Oh, my heart goes out to this guy." So I was like, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to go get some Gatorades." It was hot. I was like, "Come back, we'll talk some more or whatever." I was like, I might be able to help you out. I might know some places, you're down on your luck, whatever. And come to find out, like in the middle of it, he was like, "Oh yeah, the reason that I went to jail. The reason why I'm so old, the reason why I have no job right now is because I killed a guy.
Oh, well, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay.
So he murdered someone.
I don't know if it was that because I don't know the details. So it could have been like one of those involuntary manslaughter type deals where it's like he hit a dude with, I don't fucking know.
Right.
I don't know the details, but I was like, oh yeah. And I don't think I can help this guy, you know?
I watched, there was a podcast, I think it's like Vigilantor or Vigilante something or another.
Yeah.
It's hosted by a former Navy SEAL, and he had you remember the story of Eddie Gallagher, the SEAL who got accused of it happened a few years ago. He got accused of stabbing like a unarmed prisoner or whatever.
Vaguely.
And he went to trial, and Trump got involved and was like blah blah, and he got acquitted.
I recognize the name,
all
Eddie Gallagher. Yeah,
yeah. So he was a Navy SEAL who was accused of like killing a dude.
Yeah.
Because other guys in his team didn't like him because he was like making them do stuff that like they were like, oh, I don't know the whole story, but he was making them train and do all this like crazy shit, and so they basically came up with a story about him stabbing a dude. But there was a podcast that just came out. I think it was like a week ago. It's like Vigilant. Remember the name of it. It's like a 5-hour long podcast.
Yeah.
And it was basically the two of them sitting down. And I was like, yeah, I can see the military doing a lot of this. Like, he was talking about like how shitty the NCIS people were, and I was like, yeah, I know that's seriously a thing. Like, the NCIS people, like, it's not like the TV show. They just get it in their minds that you're guilty of something. And they're just going to make that happen. Yeah, NCIS is a fucking shit show.
This is the Veteran Talk Show. If you or someone you love is suffering as a victim of sexual harassment, sexual assault, needs help with addiction and recovery, or mental health and well-being, then please go to veterantalkshow.com/resources. This show is hosted, produced, and edited by Ryan Smeltz. Our co-host is Joe Balak, and a guest starring veterans.